Hey, everybody, it is your good friend, the Safety Doc, from down here in the North Star recording studio, where it is a wintry mix this morning, although a little face validity on that, not nearly what the weather people would report it to be. Just a little bit of flurries. And of course, it's warm enough on the ground where everything just quickly melts. So, yeah, no issue with driving or anything like that. As I went to get my coffee this morning, which is right here, I didn't realize like the bottom of this thing is really banged up. So, um, when I took it out, because pull these out of the little holder there, and then I set it down on the area to fill it up, and I'm like, what in the hell? This seems like it was wobbly. I got it sitting on something, but seems like it's fine. It's holding up here. So I'm like, I'm not going to do any trade out thing here of getting another container, pouring it in and out, that type of stuff. So hope everybody's doing well. Let me know down in the over in the chat, and then also down below in the comments if there's anything you want me in particular to address during Face Validity Friday. So this is a new segment of the Safety Doc podcast. So I was trying to do a couple new things also, like a different camera angle. For example, to have it over on the side, which would kind of show the microphone and then the fireplace in the back. And I'm working on that. The problem is I don't have the cord necessary to do that, like my extension on the USB cord. So I know where I have it stored. I have to find it and then move it, and but I think it's cool. Like I experimented with it a couple times, and it just gives a different angle for kind of the show. Although like this works too. So what is Face Validity Friday? And welcome, Carl. Thank you very much for being here. And yeah, thanks for the seven ups already here in the morning. So this is our Friday morning show, Friday Face Validity. We kind of look at what's been happening in the week, pull out some headlines or some reports or stories, whatever it might be, and then we compare those against face validity. So what is face validity? Well, in a nutshell, face validity is what you observe. So if I had a thermometer and it was reading 85 degrees, and yet like I'm standing in the middle of a snowstorm shivering, I'd be like, okay, that doesn't make sense. That's not accurate face validity. Either this thermometer is broken or I'm delusional, one of the two. So face validity, it's that kind of quick sense of surveying things with your senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you think? Like when you're reading something and it's worded in a certain way, it's like, this is this really making sense? This is like persuading me to do this for a limited time only, and all of this. Okay, that's like persuasion, right? So let's look at face validity. Is this really the case that, if I don't buy this couch right now, I'll never be able to get it in the future? Right now, that probably might be accurate, actually. But so face validity is a tool, though, that if you hone it, if you tune into it, it helps you to quickly evaluate things and say, like, I think that's right. Like that matches up pretty well to what I'm seeing, or like, no, there's something off here, and I need to look further. I need to ask other people. I need to get other sources. Now, I wrote about this in the Velocity of Information. We just don't use face validity enough. We just take what somebody says they said, and it becomes like, okay, that's what it is. And or we another thing with face validity is not paying attention to what is going on around us. It doesn't make sense to us, right? We're just like, oh, it'll at some point, like this will I'm not quite sure why this is happening, but I guess it just, it's like the coin shortage, right? So just to go from store to store and see signs up of um, credit card transactions only, or we'll buy your quarters, or things like this, and so you just kind of just go through your day, go with it. But as from face validity, right, you'd stop and think about it, and you keep thinking about, saying, this doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Because where did all the coins and money go? And we don't have vending machines, right? For the most part, I mean, just as common as they were 10 years ago, where you'd be putting, your quarters, or they remember to try to suck the dollar and it always come back out. So it's like, where did all of this go? Why is this happening? And so at face validity, as you think about that, it kind of gives us bigger signal of, maybe I need to have a little more cash on hand, or make sure my credit lines are open, because what if we are going to a less of a cash based society or something? I don't know. So face validity. Let's just think. We'll always think of it. We'll always start out on Friday mornings, and we'll remember that thermometer. That's face validity. Or you're driving down the road, right, and you're cruising, you're passing people, and you're looking down and say 22 miles an hour. I'm not sure my speedometer here is quite right. So it's the things that are supposed to measure or gauge your environment, and they're off. And these, oftentimes are news articles, right? So we're going to go through some of those today. Got them up on a screen. So I got three screens ahead of me right here that I can monitor. I've got the show up over here on the right, and then over on the left, I've got my articles. So also this morning, I was syncing my Google Drive, because apparently that's that's the thing now, right? It kept popping up and saying you need to sync this, and what was happening, and it's still not quite resolved, is I would make changes in my Google Drive, and it wasn't syncing over to my desktop. So I would actually, the show file for this, the folder, it wasn't there. So I'd go in and I'd be like, well, what's the deal? Because I know I created this, and then I could find it in one place and not the other. And so I was kind of reluctant to do that, because I don't, I indicated the files and stuff that would sync, but I really don't want a lot of my stuff out there on the cloud. So the stuff I have out there on the cloud is, like show notes and things like that. So I was really, those are the type of things. But anyway, it was kind of a pain. I was just making this go away. But so finally I had to bite the bullet and go with it. So let's check here in the chat. I'm going to change my setups a little bit here. So first of all, let's do this, and let's do this. Whoa, you guys are moving fast here. Carl, face validity equals objective observation and asking reasonable questions. Yeah, right on. And Carl, how many of us do that? So here, Carl, you and Phil, Sass, I mean, you guys, Alex, you do that. Most people don't, though. And a study that I wrote about in The Velocity of Information, 30% of people, if you ask them any question, for any question, they're going to immediately go to the internet, right? And the majority of people, more than 50%, just make a decision based on a headline, and that's it. And that number is growing. I actually watched a school safety expert who's really well known, and I was in the audience, and he gave this presentation about like why, I don't know, people needed to work with him for school safety. And so he did this 2-minute presentation, and all it was headlines. That's all it was. So he had some, background music, and took headlines about school violence and violence in general and things like that. And he got done with it, and then he's like, okay, this is why, why I'm here. This is why I'm doing whatever. And I'm thinking, and I'm like, that was just headlines. Like, yeah, it's catchy, but also, and it's emotional, right? But it's not research. It's not, what is happening in a region, what's happening over time. And I understand the technique, but I also thought like the guy was above that. Like, I'm like, dude, you're better than this. Like, you're manipulating the audience here to try to fool their face validity, where they're looking at this, but they're not asking questions like, well, you know what? Like at my school, we haven't observed, this type of violence, or I'm not seeing this, these types of things in my local newspaper and things like that. So, that was something that it just left a really bad feeling for me. Carl wrote, "Hey, there's no coin shortage. All the coins are in the registers and in the bank." I'm gonna be taking a sip of coffee periodically throughout this. So right here, and this is the Kona Black from Quick Trip, which is in so in Wisconsin we have Quick Trip, and Iowa it's Quick Star. It's the same company, and then I think they have some other branches. But so this is within walking distance of my house, but I drove down to get it. So, um, but sometimes I will actually walk. The problem is in winter. By the time you get home, like it's cold. Um, but yeah, so we have three of these gas stations in town, and like two of them are pretty close. So I think they're building another one that's literally like 2 blocks away from this one. So yeah, it's my coffee setup. As DT would say, the coffee's good. It is. I have a coffee machine I used to brew. It's a super black, high caffeinated coffee. But I don't, this is easier. I don't really have the space upstairs to keep that coffee maker. I don't want to keep it down here. So it just kind of gets too dusty. I don't be drinking dust. Um, yeah, no coin shortage. All the coins are in the registers. And so it's a weird thing too, because I have a picture in the book, and where I took it at a cash register at a gas station in my town, and it said, "We'll buy your quarters and stuff." So I asked the person, "Can I take this picture? Are you okay with that?" They're like, "Yeah." And then I said, "Well, what's the deal? Like, why can't you get quarters?" And they're like, The bank just told us they don't have them." Like, so then we contact our supervisors, and they said, "Yeah, same thing. The bank can't bring them out." I'm like, and literally, there's like literally three banks across the road from where this gas station. Three banks, and their sign is saying, "Hey, we'll buy. Give us $1.50. We'll give you $2." So I'm like, that just seems weird, right? Because I worked in a grocery store when I was in high school, and if the grocery store ran out of quarters, one, you'd go to the bank. That did happen. Or two, you went across the road to the bar, which had this gigantic container full of change. and and the owner of the grocery store, hometown grocery store, right? George would give me, I don't know, $20 or something like that. And he'd say, "Go over," and I forget the name of the bar, and tell him we need $20 of quarters. And then, yeah, the guy would like count them, put them in a bag, and I just carry him back to right across the street. I just carry him back to George. So that's how the sophisticated system was. But so a few things, and thanks for posting over in the chat. DLD After Dark, welcome, buddy. So yeah, thanks so much. Um, and I did change my show name here from the Safety Doc podcast to the Safety Doc. So, which matches actually up with my logos and things like that. The only mistake I made it was about a week ago, right? I permanently set my YouTube name to the Safety Doc podcast instead of the Safety Doc. But I was thinking about that last night, and I don't think that's a mistake, because there are a couple other people out in the safety field that call themselves the Safety Doc. So if I actually have like the link as the Safety Doc podcast, I don't think that's as I think it probably helps actually to distinguish who I am. There's also a David D as David D Perodin. I'm David P Perodin, and he's does similar stuff to what I do. He's like a university professor, a researcher, like over in France, and so like I can bring up his Google Scholar stuff, and I get contacted by people who know him, right? And they think they're contacting him, and they're like, "Hey, like here's a paper I was talking about like at this conference." I don't understand any of it. Like, I have to translate from French to English, um, but so it's interesting. I contacted him. I found his email address and said, "Hey, like, whenever I get this stuff, I always email back to people and say, I think you've sent this to the wrong person." And then I send your address, if that's, like his university address. But that's happening a lot, because I think he's presenting a lot of stuff. It's good, like to have somebody think that I'm him. He's a very sound academic and good person, so um, yes. So I'm not going to give the name, but my mother-in-law, her next door neighbor is next to a lives next to someone who shares a name with a well-known criminal. so like that sometimes brings up people who actually go to that area just because they find this person's name, through Google searches and things like that, and then they show up in the neighborhood and then knock on the door like, "Hey, is this the loper over here? Or the lopper, the person that chops people's heads off?" No, no, it's a different lopper. So um, you're out of luck. But yeah, so I am. So the purpose again of this show is I'm doing the two shows a week, and the Friday morning show. One of the reasons is to get out of bed early, for me. So, and otherwise, I don't have a lot going on my Fridays, and I want to make them more productive. That's true. But the other part is I've wanted to do, since I wrote The Velocity of Information, a show that's part of the Safety Doc podcast, but different. And I'll create a playlist for this, but it would be every Friday morning to go through. Again, I've got some headlines up on the side, images, things that you email me. So to get a hold of me is safetydoc@gmail.com. All right, that's where all of my people can email me about the show and stuff like that. It's not my personal email address. Um, and there is a lot of spam that goes to that one. But if you put something through there, I'll find it. And some of you have already contacted me at that one. That's where the media contacts me. I always put, hey, put media query in. So anyway, before I talk a little bit more about a couple things going on and into these, a shout out, thank you for Carl being here, for Phil. Is it by No Bueno? So thank you, buddy. Cappy, yeah, it's sent here by my good friend Cappy. Cappy sent me two text messages last night, midnight. But for him, it's like 11 o'clock, right? Because different time zone, and he's so in his place, he's taken on the role of a pseudo carpenter, because he said, the contractor, the general contractor, and then the people who are supposed to come in and do electrical and finish up drywall and things like this at his place. That's inconsistent, and so he started to do some of this himself. And he's pretty, Cappy's pretty handy, right? Um, so he was just giving me an update on a couple of the things, that Carpenter Cappy. So by New Bueno. When you're in one of his shows, just tell him that Doc now is calling him Carpenter Cappy, because yeah, he's which is cool. Like I remember when we moved in here, and I was doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Like I built a door, which is probably the best door in the whole house. Just things I was doing. Like I made this also drawer um, in my garage, and it doesn't have any um, it doesn't have any slides, anything like that. I made it underneath my work table, and then I just used a little paraffin wax on each side so it slide in and out. And it can support a lot of weight. The thing is like perfect, absolutely perfect. I mean, it's been here for 18 years, and like the tolerances and everything, and it's amazing, because I'm like, God, I mean, that's really cool. Yeah, and you never have to worry about like breaking off a slide or pulling it out too far and like snapping off. And but I do have one of my doors isn't closing well, and I'm a little more concerned about it. Like it's one of my house doors, and I'm going to work on it later today. But I have a little bit of a question. Like I'm wondering if someone tried to force their way in on that. Like there's no sign of like a pry bar or anything, but it seems, and I have my doors like really reinforced. I don't take whatever comes with the kit. I'm taking that, and I'm drilling, you know 3-inch screws in, and deadbolts and all of this stuff. but I'm like, something, and it might have been on Halloween. Like we had a lot of kids over on Halloween. When I say kids, like high school kids, like my daughter's friends and stuff like that. And like if one of them would have like not had the door open and tried to go out and hit it or something like that, it could have thrown this off a little bit. But I got to figure out what the hell's going on because I can't get that door to close tight, and that's not it's not a good thing because the winds it was windy here yesterday. And the door flies open. I'm like, what in the hell? So I'll get her figured out. Um, so welcome to Phil. Bueno Sast. Good morning, Doc again. Hey, Sast. Sast. All right. Sast to the cannonball run throws him off a little bit with daylight savings time. So he has to wait until it's at least sunny out because it's about 194 miles an hour he gets up to in his Subaru, which he has a Wankel engine in. So pretty amazing. So SAST, awesome. Cuts down the time you drive to and from work. And he's always safe, right? He's always really paying attention to what's going on. But, you got to drive 25 miles to work. And you're doing almost 200 miles an hour. It's just about a 10-minute drive. So SAST, yeah, he's known for that. That's just a blur. There he goes. And Alex Bestoso. Alex, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm bad with names this morning. I know you, Alex, right? You've been here before. So don't take it, be like, I can't believe Doc just pronounced my name wrong. So I had Lisa Lenny on my show. She's an attorney in Houston a couple of weeks ago. And like before the show, I'm like, okay, your last name is Lenny, and Lisa's really cool. And I'm like, how the hell am I not getting this? Like, it's 2 syllables, Lenny. And then she's like, Lenny, like your knee, like Lenny. So I still got in. I'm like, Lisa, Lenny. And so I'm sorry. So please, like, it's my, for some reason and my background also in speech language pathology, right? As working as a speech language pathologist, you think I'd have this figured out a little bit more. I don't know. So Alex, Dark, thank you so much. Hey, brother, good to see you live. Good to see you last night on your show. You've been making a lot of great content, so I've been tuning in on that. So thank you so much. And yeah, I was a guest on Dark's show earlier in the week, so you can find that episode. And oh boy, we talked about a lot of stuff, including memos coming out from the Attorney General to the FBI of like, should schools be, observing parents for possible intimidation against school boards and things like that. And so there was an article yesterday. I didn't find it. And I didn't include it for today. Like I couldn't find it for today. But it was a face validity, and it was a school district in Arizona where like the superintendent or school board president was collecting information on people in the audience who were opposed to opinions the board had on curriculum and other things, and hired a private detective to do this. And so then then it came out, like it's out there again. I couldn't find it, I will at some point, but at face validity, right? So how do you spin that? How do you make sense of that as a superintendent or a board where you can at all justify that you're doing this, right? So they had some really weak sauce, reasoning for this. But of course, it's like, well, you feel empowered now by the National School Board Association writing their letter to President Biden on September 29th saying, hey, like we need more evidence, on how parents are influencing board meetings and intimidating, stuff like that. And then the Attorney General on October 4th sending a letter to the FBI saying, hey, like get on top of this and let us know in 30 days. So I think they kind of jumped on that. But anyway, let's look over here. This is our good friend Phil Henry. Phil Henry out of Germany. It's a 1700 there. So one thing Phil is doing is he is working aggressively to convert all of us to 24-hour time. So yeah. So 1700, which will be what, 5 o'clock? But that's pretty good, right? Like that's probably a good time for you to be watching this show. So you're going to watch it while you drive home. So take care, buddy. One thing Phil has is a 37-inch screen inside of his car. So yeah, it takes up a lot of the windshield. so he has to be very careful as he's driving home. So, um, yeah, I knew somebody who rigged up. Excuse me, here. I'm good. I think one of these times, every time you cough, there's going to be a report to Google and stuff like that. Hey, this guy coughed. We got to go check him out. I had a friend in college who rigged up a laptop on his dashboard, and he would watch like movies on his way to when he would commute because he had like a long commute to and from college. So yeah, it was just this, weekend at Bernie's, whenever you throw on it, just crazy stuff. I think it probably looked like a cop though, right? Because back in those days, it was a little more visible that you could see these laptops. So every time, like you probably pulled up to something, and you're like looking back there, oh god, it's a police car. So you pass them and be like, oh wow. So Alex Dark, and let's see, Carl, Alex Dark. Trying to keep up here. Good. Okay. So let me I'm going to here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come back to the comments a little bit. Thank you so much for the comments. I love it. Thanks already. 13 thumbs up. So again, faithful, and I want you to do this. I want you to tell some people, or just explain face validity to to your family, to your friends, and things like that. And again, a way to help people understand it. And again, I wrote about it in the book in two ways. The short, dirty, quick way was, you've got a thermometer, you're standing in the middle of a snowstorm, right? And you're shivering. Thermometer says like 80, 85 degrees. And you're looking at that saying, okay, this is supposed to be measuring, right, the temperature. And from face validity standpoint, it doesn't make sense because it's either broken or you're delusional. One of the two is happening. I also wrote about, let's say you go to a doctor's appointment, all right, and you come into the doctor's appointment and you're all like happy and well, I don't know who really does that, but like you sit down and everything, you're fine, and you look good, you're clean, and the doctor comes in and all of that. So, hey, how you doing? Hey, I feel fine. I feel good, and stuff like that. Podcast is going well. I was on Dark Show the other night. They're like, this looks good. You feeling good? I say, yeah, I feel good. And no aches, no pains. So like, okay. So they're looking at you and they're like, okay, upbeat, voice sounds good, presentation is good, looks good. So from face validity, the doctor's thinking, okay, yeah, it's probably pretty good. It's what Dave's reporting. We'll check the blood pressure. And oh my God, blood pressure's high. You've been talking to Phil Henry or Alex? I'm like, yeah. Plus, like, Cappy keeps like sending me all these messages every time he like wires something up in his house because he's so happy. So, which I'm happy for him. Is just tired, kind of startles me. It's like late at night. But so they're like, okay, but let's do this. I come into the doctor and I'm coughing, and face is pale, kind of sweaty, a little jittery, not hair's all messed up, not clean, shirts old and kind of dirty, and voice rugged, stuff like that. And the doc says, hey, like you wrote down like everything was fine. You're on this like a 3-page thing they have you do, where they always have the question like, are you do you feel safe in your own house? And so I'm like, yes. And then does that include the ghost and the hauntings? I'm like, well, I don't know if you include that. That's different, right? But but if so, the doc comes in and doc's like, how you doing? All that, and you're coughing and you look, horrible and stuff like this, and rashes and so face validity from the doctor would be like, well, Dave says he's fine, but he's not fine, right? Because I'm observing his voice is all crackly. There's rashes and he's sweaty and shaky and things like that. So something's wrong. So again, this is the thing of face validity, and you start tuning into that from prices, signs that are up, what people are telling you, and headlines and stuff like that. It's like inflation, right? Yeah, inflation just went up like 4%. And you go shopping and the same stuff that you bought for, the last year, that when, same list, like I literally put together my shopping list, and it, there's very little variation in it. So I'd be like, okay, this cost me like $60 a year ago. And, I just went yesterday and now it's like 88. So I'm like, what the hell? Um, so, saying it's just inflation's up a little bit. Oh, like gas is up a little bit. Like I was at the gas station this morning. It's like 3.79 here. And it was, $2.10 a year ago. I mean, I track some of this for tax purposes too, because I have, when I travel to the university and things like that. So I did that last night. I was putting together my expense log for fall because I'm actually done actually having to travel to the university. I've got some other stuff, but all my travel stuff, and I have to get that in. And I'm looking, I'm like, holy smokies. Like, I this was a lot more costly for me to travel, like the gas thing, and than it was a year ago. I mean, it was significantly higher, like a couple $100 higher for the fall. But yeah, no, don't worry about it. It's not really here. Oh yeah, and we're going to face validity too, right? We're going to raise interest rates, and check those out at the bank. They're less than 1%. But um, so those are the things. So the safety doc, you'll see it on the podcast now. It just says the safety doc, which actually matches my logo, which is the safety doc. It doesn't say safety doc podcast. A couple of my logos, and then the one for the show. Well, I guess all of my logos just say the safety doc. So it's streamlines the brand a little bit. Um, and that's a recommendation of Dark. So thank you. And if you have any recommendations like that, yeah, share them, because I'm trying to I changed up the thumbnails too. So if you look at my shows, like this one will have probably the thumbnail, I don't know why it was just on the three dots today, but it's in there under YouTube. Trying to make it so it's easy to read, very concise, like 4 words or something like that. So if you're bringing it up on your phone, you can see it clearly. And then also the regular shows, which will be either Sunday night or Monday night. I haven't nailed that down. Be one of the two. I'll nail it down soon. Just very easy, like very continuity. You'll know when you see the thumbnail. It's a safety doc thing. My book, The Velocity of Information. So I've got a couple updates on that. The ISBN number was assigned to the book on, I don't know, 2 days ago. So now it's copyrighted in the US and internationally. They go through the two processes, my publisher. So they let me know, hey, you're officially copyrighted. So that's good. You don't want any bootleg copy of Velocity of Information getting out there, and then it ends up being published somewhere else, and you got to go to battle that out. So that's good news. And then a couple things my publisher said, we are going to give you the proof, which, so the proof is the whole book after they've typeset it, and then they're obviously proofreading, although I don't know if anything they'd find, the book has already been edited, but citations, things like that. And then they give it to you, but now they said that we've changed things. It's all online. So we'll give you a code. You'll go in and you'll be able to see everything online, which I guess is okay. Like it would be formatted. And then I don't know how I would go in. There's some way to make like changes, or they'll put comments or say like, look at this. And so again, I don't know. I don't even know what this is. Like I don't have any idea, because and I think they did say like if it's totally wonky, we can send you a PDF of it. But I get that on December 18th, and then I have to review it and return it, or I have to have everything complete by December 28th, and then that's it. Like there's no second proof or third proof, which I was used to with the other book. So everything has to be like ready to go. But I'm like, December 18th versus like the 20th, like this is not Christmas, right? It's in the middle of that. And so they're like, is this going to be a problem? I'm like, well, no, I mean, it's not, it's just kind of weird, but I was thinking about it, and I'm like, they must have a timeline. They have to hit like the 28th, maybe fiscally, they have to have some things done before the end of the year. And then yesterday they also said, we're about a month out from having the cover options for you. So that's like super exciting to see what they come up with. And then, which ones we'll select, or which ones I'll select, or which one, right? It's not going to have multiple covers. So let's go over here in the chat, and then we'll get over to our first article. By no bueno. And by the way, like, I am up to one or no 100. Yeah, I'm up to 100 subscribers. So I'm up to 551 subscribers to the channel, in big part thanks to Dark. And I've like 100 more than I had a month ago. So just thank you, everybody. Cappy did a show at an airport. He was waiting to catch a flight, so he jumped on and he did a couple little, like 3 minute shows. And he's like, "Hey, like everybody, the Safety Doc podcast, and I'd like to help, Dr. Pro and get up to my friend Dr. Pro and get up to 1,000 subscribers." And then I was like in real time, I was doing some stuff on the channel, and I'm like, all of a sudden I had like 5 more subscribers, and then I had 10, and then I had 15. I was like, "What's going on?" So I went and caught that. So he didn't tell me. Like I sent him a message. I'm like, "Thanks, buddy." Um, so good morning here from Doc. All right, over there on the East Coast. So you probably got the kind of snowy, cold weather coming towards you, but you might have seen. But I had all the firewood too. I can show a picture of that. Wow, 14 cords of firewood. I have to carry it from my garage to the basement. It took me 3 days, and I had to start stacking really in a uncomfortable way because I have most of the wood goes against a wall. It's poured wall, basement concrete. So nothing's going to happen. Wall supports it, but then I couldn't do that. Like I ran out of space, and I had to separate out the wood piles from like the newest to the oldest. So I had to start like putting piles in the middle of the room. So then it's very like you have to interlace all of the wood, because if you don't, like piles can get rocky, things can fall over, and especially in stuff like 7 feet tall, it could be like the end of me. Like one of these days, you'd be like, "Why is Doc not posting?" And then like somebody does a search, and they're like, "Oh my god, he's a wood pile fell on him." So I wonder what that statistic would be for fatalities. How many people die a year from their basement wood piles collapsing on them? So it's probably low. Be pretty embarrassing too, because I've done this for 20 years. What's up, brother? Great to see you live. Same here, Dark. And as Dark would say, be kind to people, have empathy. Absolutely true. Like you don't know what people have encountered that day. So there's a long walk that I take around town, and it's yeah, about 7 miles, and I go through. Actually, I go out of town, and there's like this big mansion, which is pretty cool. Um, I know. It's kind of cool to see. It's right by our airport. So like from the mansion, they have a path that then they can take their plane like over to the airport and stuff like that. But anyway, so I go past the airport, and I like that. It's the smaller planes. We have a big airport here, but it's kind of cool to see the smaller planes, out, and there's always like a lot of activity. I think it's just like kind of a guys club, where the people are just kind of hanging out. Um, so I walk past that, and then we have two lakes in our town, and then as I'm walking past this one lake, there's a house, and it just typical house, and there's a car usually parked in the driveway, and there's a bumper sticker on the car, and the bumper sticker says, it's a big bumper sticker. It says, "I hope something good happens to you today." And I was like, so I'm like, whoa, well that's cool. Like that's a cool bumper sticker. And so every time I walk past that and you see that, it's like, it's just kind of a good way to frame things out. So I like that they do that. So yeah, do that. Be generous to people who provide services, whether it be restaurants or delivery, or we had a washer dryer delivered this summer, and God, and it was like hot. It was like 90 degrees. It was just hot, and these two guys probably in their 20s, they have to carry this stuff downstairs. So they had to get the ones out that were down here. We had these pedestal washer dryer that were just heavier than hell, that had been we bought like 15 years ago, and they kind of burned out. So these guys, and it's not easy to get down there. So they take these things out, and then they use they carry them. There's a strap over the shoulders, stuff like that, and it's a synchronized thing. But these guys are just sweating, like they're just, and I'm like, oh man. And And I was like, and I had like a cash tip for each of them, like right away, like after they, got that out. But to do it like in the middle, right? I don't want to do it kind of at the end because I don't I I don't want to accidentally like take off before I have the tip or anything like that. So I said, here, appreciate that. I know you guys are probably running all over the place, and I don't know what they pay you to deliver here, but thanks, and thanks for taking your time getting things in and out. And then they also changed out a cord on the dryer because I didn't. Um, the one that it came, that was some weird setup, like a range type thing. Like it still works, like 220. It looks like Cappy might have wired it, and they're like, "Oh, like this is whatever." But I think because like I was cool, right? And because I tipped them before, like they even knew this was an issue, they're like, "Oh, we can take this like a panel apart on the back and we'll just like change it out. It's not that big of a thing." But yeah, just like be kind to people. Just, kind, nice words. And I was, oh God, yeah, I was at Arby's yesterday. I mean, Bacon would love that. So I stopped at Arby's. And then like the lady, I after she's like, here's your number. I'm like, do I get a cup with that? And she's like, oh God, I'm so sorry. Like I was busy. I'm like, well, don't worry about it. I'm like, I'm good with cup or no cup. I just thought there's a cup that comes with this. I said, but we're all cool. We're all cool. And there was a sign on the door at the Arby's, and it said like, please be nice to it actually says this is please be nice to our staff. Um, we don't have all the supplies and we're also short staffed. So, but I'm like, whoa, whoa, I get it. Like, don't, no, no, no. I'm not upset or anything like that. We're all good. We're all good. Um, so smart move here from Alex. Thanks, Alex. And hey, it's dark. And all right, we're catching up here on the chat. Sast from Carl. Great to see Alex. Would the opposite of face validity be gaslighting? God, that Carl, that is good. Oh, let me think about that. I don't know. And you guys can post over that if you think the opposite of face validity is gaslighting. Um, I think face validity detects gaslighting, um, right? But yeah, uh, I don't know. You're right. Face validity is going to would help you detect the psyops, right? of what got of gaslighting. Um, but face validity you'd recognize gaslighting, and then through kind of member checking or more evidence, you would debunk gaslighting. But you're right, gaslighting. A lot of times, you get the feeling you're being gaslighted. Like, hey, that was a great present. I remember when I was in PBS, and like someone afterwards that I worked with was, oh, like, you know, that was a great presentation. Like too bad they, couldn't have had the camera like closer on you or whatever, and then whatever. And I was like, well, okay, but I thought it was fine. I don't really care. But of course, you're seeing the camera thing because like you're jealous. Like I get it. Like right, um, you don't. I mean, it's like what I would say to somebody, and I like every time like Cappy and I talk, for example, and he's Carpenter Cappy. I'm just like I'm happy for you, man. Like because you know the more stuff you can kind of just pick up and do for yourself and things like that, and just I know he's really happy after being in his place in Minneapolis to being out in South Dakota. I'm happy for people, like, so that's another thing, like, tell people you're happy for them. Somebody gets a car, gets a job, does well, wins a fantasy football game. I'm happy for you. Or the way that they mold their long compliment. That's one thing I've learned to do also. And I think for face validity, you generally, like, you can tell when people they're happy for you, right? And not gaslighting you. Oh, whatever. But um, so Alex wrote, I give the stores my cash, and every time I say that they can keep one penny, they give it to me. That's weird. One thing I haven't noticed, Alex, I haven't noticed those little penny coin jars or those little coin containers by the register. Maybe they're still there, but it seemed like they were always like I always noticed them. And I, like when I got coffee today and put the coffee on the thing, it's like I didn't notice that. It's good. Coffee's good, soldiers. I'm doing a little DT stuff. I appreciate DT, but with not competing with the show because he stopped the Black Brigade. Manipulation of information is called lying. Let's just keep it simple. Oh yeah, I mean, there's lying, right? There certainly is, and face validity is going to bring that up. Of hey, this isn't this isn't right, and is it just that the information's incomplete, or is it just a flat out lie, right? So you're right. Dark said, nobody does research anymore, especially in this day and age. It's sad, especially at the speed of which you're able to receive information. People shove their perspective down your throat without research. Absolutely. And Dark, that is exactly what I wrote about in the Velocity of Information. So the first 70 pages of that book talks about, hey, like 300 years ago, if you were to learn that a relative had passed or something, you'd learn probably several days after it happened, if not weeks, like the information we get you. Now, like gets to the moment someone is diagnosed with something, it's either posted to social media or whatever, and you get it right away. And the fact that, yeah, people don't do research on what is good for what is in their best interest. They just kind of take these things and run with it. But so velocity, for the book, velocity of information, velocity is speed in a direction. So that's the thing I wrote about is years ago, even like 20 years ago, velocity, when information came out, news came out, right? It just kind of got shot out of a cannon and just this confetti thing, and like it would land and some of it would be on you. You get some of the news of what was going on, but it wasn't like directed to you necessarily. And now velocity means it's coming right to you. It comes right to your phone. How many of us got emails after the second, third week of COVID? We got like, hey, here I'm here from REI or something. Dear customer, like we support you in anything that you need, and all of this stuff like started to be directly at us. So that's the thing, is velocity is coming to, and we have it with our phone. It's not like it's just passive, right? We want this. We want all of the updates. We want the push notifications. So we are checking and refreshing all of our social media several times a day. It's something called time on target. Was from like World War I, World War II. Like if you would have all of these different munitions set up all over the place, and you could time out when you'd fire different ones, that they would all land on the same spot. It's kind of that right now. We're bringing all this stuff onto ourselves. So it's not like we can just claim that we're the unwilling recipient of this. To some extent we are, but on some extent we call it upon ourselves. That's why if you follow Cappy, you'll see like he'll be like, I didn't read the news today, I'm out here golfing, so whatever happened. Alex wrote, you can manipulate without being false. True. I mean, yeah. And just the information that you give access to, if it's it can be incomplete, but it can be accurate, right? So that's a good point. That's why, again, in Velocity of Information, I have several chapters and wrote, Joe Dolio about a member check network and my own member check network, where, contacting Brian in the Bronx and, Chuck in Pittsburgh and other people. What are you observing around you? And here's what I'm getting in information. Carl, After Dark, and those of us that do and present it get shouted out, down, and get name called. No discussion or reading on your own, just fees, and emotional incontinence. Whoa. All right, Carl. Well, first of all, Carl, like when you were on my podcast, you did a terrific job and I wrote about, so what Carl's saying is like, yeah, when you bring stuff up, right, you call out face validity, people are like, I don't want to hear it when it goes against their narrative, right? So we have to understand that face validity isn't something people want to deal with because it takes work to change your position, to have multiple perspectives on things. Like it's just uncomfortable for people. So it's a lot easier for them to just go with what the media is saying or what the narrative is. So you got to push people on that. You got to be like, no, you does this make sense? I mean, all of these things, and but so one of the things. So great face validity example from Carl. Just this light over here. All right, one of the things, Carl. All right, um, Carl, and I wrote about this in the book. So Carl was saying with his experience, in working with environmental labs and stuff like that. So imagine you go to Walmart and but you go to a big box store, you go to Walmart, and it's 3-4 weeks into the coronavirus. So let's say it's first week of April, 2020. Face validity. So face validity, what you're watching for is like, okay, what are they doing for their sanitizing measures right here and social distancing and all that? Like what, because we're hearing all of this stuff about how, severe, the situation is. So Carl brought up, and he said, well, if you were to follow procedures for, virus mitigation, for example, what would be a bare minimum best practice? You would go in, and they would probably have an area, maybe like a tent type thing, and so you'd go in there, and they would probably give you a gown, think of that like yellow hospital gowny type thing, and they'd give you gloves, and they'd give you a mask. So they have inter-rater reliability. So everybody's getting the same thing, and they have some tests likely they've done on, okay, this mask prevents this level of aerosol from coming in or out, you know, and the gown and the gloves and all of that. So they would give you this, and then you'd go shopping. And when you would leave, dun, 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 you would deposit all of this, right? They'd have a place they would collect it, kind of like that Sharps container, but like this really massive thing, right? And so every time you came into the store, they would know. So you're not using a bandana as a mask or wearing a pair of underwear over your head or something like that. You would have this inter-rater reliability. So that's face validity. So when Carl is saying, hey, like, we're not seeing this, like this would be something you would see in a situation where you were trying to aggressively mitigate against a virus. So what I saw for face validity was there was somebody counting who was coming in, and I think they were matching it to who was coming out, so they didn't have too much density in the building at any time, too much population. But that was never an issue. Like I never was told like stay outside until like one person leaves. And then they had at one point they had somebody wiping down with like Lysol wipes the carts before they hand them to you. And then like that got outsourced to you. They had a little stand there. So you'd go up and you'd wipe down the cart yourself. And then that was it. Like that was it. So, these for face validity things really great. But I wrote about that. That's crediting Carl in there. So thanks for that. So let's see here. Sass wrote, coins cost more to make than they're worth. Yeah. Yep. That's truth, Carl. I started accepting it. It's sad. So, yeah. And Dark, I mean, I think, right, we still have critical thinkers out there. And people are conditioned to not critically think. They're just conditioned to turn on the news. And as I've admitted, I just hate the news because it's just headline jumping, right? That's all it is. It's 60 seconds, or, if it's a long segment, it's 90 seconds. And we don't have these kind of deep investigative stories because nobody wants to put the time into that, right? And the companies aren't going to put the time into that. So, but it doesn't. At the same time, we have very thorough like podcasts, or social media, right? Channels. Juan Brown, the airline pilot out of Oroville, near Oroville, California, that I wrote about in my book, finding out what was going on at the Oroville Dam in 2017, and doing presentations about it, stuff like that. And we can find these people, like they're out there. They're just like the thing is, like, no one is going to point you to them as big media. It's interesting though, because I mean, like, media, like, if I get 1,000 subscribers and there's ads and people do some super chats, I could actually make some money off of this. And I mean, like, I know people, like, as full-time YouTubers, and some of them have information channels. So so I think it is this. It's called samostat. Let me put that down below. And this is an interesting term to learn. I didn't know I didn't know about it until I interviewed. Um, I didn't know about samostat until I interviewed Nikolai Razvayu, the Soviet national cyclist who was by Chernobyl. And I was like, he's like, it's like samostat. And I'm like, samostat? Like, what is samostat? And he's like, it's underground, like, newspapers. It'd be like a page long or something in the Soviet Union and back in the 70s and 80s. And you'd pay like a ruble for it or something. And you'd get this paper that someone, like, was, hand wrote, or they produced a couple copies in their basement. It was before, like, computers, stuff like that. And then that was basically, like he said, about 90% of it was probably accurate, and but in 10% maybe not. But generally, like, the samostat was much more highly valued than the state media. So I think there is a samostat quality to what's happening on the internet for certain channels, that they're bringing out, a truth and a truth discussion. And yeah, I mean, that's not always going to be on and things like that, but it's I think there's a big plus. We're at this time, this kind of crossing of the streams and Ghostbusters. Don't cross the streams. Thanks for letting me know that we're all carrying an unlicensed nuclear reactor on our back. So these will be like words as the YouTube algorithm scrolls through this. They'll be like, what the hell? Safety Doc was mentioning an unlicensed nuclear reactor. So be like, yeah, no, 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 we're good. And they're like, was Ghostbusters said before or after? So Carlo Dark, I simply stop talking and go to my own thing. Let them have their tantrum. So and I think there's only be kind to people, have empathy. There are people who get, it's called negative vicarious rehearsal. Negative vicarious rehearsal. And again, wrote about this in The Velocity of Information, gave some great examples. And these are people who get so sucked into the narratives that are pushed around them, that they completely lose their objectiveness, right? So these are people who, there was, again, in the book, a family in a rural town, with like 200 people, literally 200 people, population of this town. And they were terrified, in 2020, summer 2020, that the riots were going to be coming to their town. So, like, they were preparing, they're barricading stuff up, and, all of this other, doing patrols and things like that. I'm like, but the thing was, they were doing that because the media was totally pumping that up, trying to make them fearful, like their town was going to be destroyed. And it wasn't at all accurate, and there wasn't anything close by. But they changed their lifestyles, right? Like, they were preparing as if they were going to be. They were terrified. So if you again, some people, when you interface, with them, and I think the best thing to say, and I use this, and maybe this is some advice anybody can use. I say, if someone is really convinced, even though I can say face validity, they say, oh, the road is blocked. And Joe Dolio talked about this too. Like, someone saying, hey, they're doing the checkpoints on Michigan Avenue and it's all blocked and stuff like that. So he would go there and he's like, it's not, it's like open, things like that. And then, someone would be like, no, 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 they're doing this. And he'd say, okay, I was just there. It's not happening. My observation, but it seems you have different information than I have. So we have different sets of information which are informing us right now. And so this is what my information is telling me. And, apparently, your information is giving you a different impression of what's happening. So we have to kind of leave it at that. Like, we can't come to an agreement with this. And that's kind of a safe way to not shatter people's psychology. Because I think sometimes they just operate from this mode of being like super afraid. And And if you call them out on it, the people kind of double down on that, or they don't want to be embarrassed or things like that. And sometimes people just can't be rationalized with, but you also leave them without firing them up against you, right? You're not trying to pick a fight with them or anything. You can just say, you know, we have different sets of information that we're using to make our decisions right now. So if I hear anything like that, or but yeah, your job isn't to go out and convince the world of what's happening between in front of their faces. Sounds solid, makes it easier to share information. David Pro's a title, not a name like the Pope. Yeah, it's a title. It's David. It has to be. I always use David P. Proden now because the David Proden mixes me up too much with my doppelganger in France. So, and as I said, that's not a bad thing because he's extremely established scholar, good guy. But yeah, I always use David P. So talking about the Pope, it's it's fire burning season here at my house. Heat my house with wood, and so if I do it during the day, and depending upon the temperature, and because I'm at the top of a hill too, and all the stuff you got to kind of consider, like the air pressure and things like that. Of like, oh, you have to maneuver the flue so the smoke doesn't come back in your house. But for a while, like it'll just puff out like a steam engine, like a locomotive. It'll puff out white smoke. And so it looks like there's a new pope. People are driving by our house. They're like, oh my God, look at the white smoke come out of Dave's chimney. There's a new pope just been named, new pope. It's kind of my running joke, right? Because of the Vatican, they put the white smoke after they've named a new pope. And then I live again at top of a hill in my city, and then the smoke will drift down into the valley. And one day I started a fire, and I left to like go to the track, and then I was down by the track, and I'm coming back like, what in the hell? I'm like, there's quite a bit of smoke, like, and it wasn't, but it's oh, okay, man, just had a good smell. I mean, it was just really cool. But I'm like, someone have a campfire, and I walk up to my house, it's coming from my house. So I think I'd be in trouble though if my neighbors ever complained. I don't know how the city would handle that. I mean, because we've been here and chimneys are legal and stuff like that, but my sleep cycle changes like the moon, Alex. So, hey, Doc Mictobus. Shout out to our good friend Mictobus. Dun, dun, dun. Mictobus, I am going to be heading out to your area at some point, probably in the next year. And we are going to be doing a tour of Gettysburg. So Vince is going to be a part of that, and there'll be some others, but I definitely want you to be a part of that. And I'm going to, in addition to that, kind of do like a book meetup and things like that. So there's like an ancillary purpose to that. One is obviously I want to meet you guys and I want to hang out. And the second is with the book and the book release to maybe have a few media coverage things, right? Especially smaller towns. If an author comes in, they might cover it, and it just helps in the Google search and stuff like that. So anyway, we'll try to make it happen. I just posted my Discord on my YouTube channel community. Like, hope to bring extra viewers. So I hope so too. I'm here hanging out with my 9 viewers, and I appreciate all of you. And when I started this show, and again, because it kind of gets into that narrow and safety, it'd be like 3 viewers. So I'm up like threefold. The show that I'm doing Monday night is going to be called Monday or Sunday night, one of the two, but it's going to be called Essential, Non-Essential, and Unessential, kind of the sorting bins for people in March of 2020. And we're going to get into that in Agency and Purpose. So, by the way, Discord, I'm running off of Twitter as my social media, then I have LinkedIn, right, which is pretty useless for everything. So I don't have Facebook, and I don't have other channels. So I should sit down and study this a little bit more to broaden my social media footprint, especially before the release of this book, which is, big time, right? Like it's big book. Yay. Let's see here. It was 88 Isuzu Impulse, Lotus suspension. So they better cover school boards trying to corrupt children. So I will get into that, and I've been getting into that weird National School Board Association stuff, and how a lot of school boards have distanced themselves from that now, where they wanted like the FBI kind of to be involved in monitoring and evidence. And in my state, like our school board association issued a statement which was the most, you know, I'd have to go back and check the wording on it, but it was not really like, "Hey, we're done with you. Like you know, contaminated the well, we're gone." It was kind of like, "We're not going to participate in activities or whatever," and and it was just so you could tell the team of lawyers that worked through it, and basically it was kind of like saying, "Listen, we're not going to play with you at the next recess because you did something that was kind of bad, but we're still kind of friends, and this will all blow over, and like we'll be back on the same page." It was a pretty gutless statement, and so anyway, backface. All right, did the super get censored or country revoked? They should have. So, that was like it's really fast developing. I think I just found out about this in the last day or two, and it's in Arizona. So, but who knows how that stuff will go? We'll kind of break that down. Um, so let's do this. Let's go over. Hey, Moose Gal, welcome, Moose Gal. Dun, dun, dun. Good morning. All right, Moose Gal's Corner from Illinois. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Our first article, I'm going to bring it up over here, is what? And it is from it's from our friends here at Drudge. And let me get the share screen thing going on here. All right. And I am going to be doing the paid version of this. All right. Yeah, this looks good. And cool. All right. So how's that? That's even better. Okay. So this article comes from Drudge is the source. So here's our first face validity article. Inflation pinched shoppers are turning to discount stores ahead of the holidays. So let me read through this, and then let's do a little talk on face validity with this. So this is from Financial Advisor, and the title in Inflation Pinched Shoppers are turning to discount stores ahead of the holidays, November 11th, 2021, by Jill R. Shaw. So U.S. consumers are increasingly shopping at discount stores, a sign that families are feeling the pinch from the highest inflation since the 1990s as the holiday season approaches. Spending at discount stores was up 65% last week compared to 2019, 21% from the prior week, according to Factious, a firm that tracks credit and debit card transactions. The discount stores category, which includes Dollar Tree and Five Below, had the largest increase by far among all retailers. The sharp uptick suggests that consumers, especially lower income households, sought lower prices wherever they could find them. The last time discount stores saw a large increase in spending was in March, when all of the retailers benefit from a 1.9 trillion relief program that sent stimulus checks to families. Okay, so let's take this from a face validity perspective. Okay, so the face validity, so this article is saying, hey, like people are going, more people are shopping at the dollar stores. That's where people are trying to get deals, trying to, I don't know. So I went out yesterday and I went to our $2 type stores in our town. One is brand new. And I was checking in. One is I saw more people. And I mean, some of that might be holiday stuff, but I saw more people and I saw more, I saw more food items toward the front of the store. So, and I saw some brand name stuff too, like the Campbell's, things like that. But I saw more of not the toys type things, but more of the consumer staples were up toward the front of the store. So stuff like that, toothpaste, things like that. So there's actually been a little bit of rearranging, a little bit of staging. So yeah, in my take in this, and the parking lots were both stuffed at these places. Like that is exactly what I saw happening, that people were going there. So, what would that tell me from a face validity standpoint? It would it would tell me from face validity, right, that the economy, you know, with inflation and that it is driving people into the best deals that they can, you know, that they can find out there for just their regular consumer staples. Um, so that is something that, yeah, it was confirmed. So if I would have gone there, right, and I'm walking around and it's like, nope, and they seem to be getting in. Both of them seem pretty well stocked. So, but again, and I was starting to, and I saw some more brand name stuff than I kind of see in the past, especially like soups and like Campbell's and stuff like that. Toothpaste, a couple brand name stuff. So, um, yeah. So that was our first one right there. Anybody see anything different in the anybody see anything different here? So, all right. Okay. So that was our first one. Juan is in here. Juan, the Aztec patriarch. Try Instagram. I do. I need. I'm not asking, but I need some. I need someone to kind of like sit down and say like, here's some things that would help you with your, you know, I'm not going to go all out and I'm not, but just like what I can manage myself. And like, I do have time to do this. Um, but like say if you had an Instagram, and I'm probably not going to go on Facebook because I just don't, I, I like all of this, it's funny because we have one, you know, one family member who participates in Facebook just because so many other family members do, just to keep track of invites and stuff like that to events and activities. But you know, I don't have it, and I don't post. I don't want to get sucked into that. I don't want people to try to friend me and things like that. I mean, I don't have time for that. I think to interact with an audience, as Juan said, through Instagram. I do have the you know, web page safety PhD. You know, you're only gonna find that obviously if you're looking for it, but you know, Twitter I'm pretty active on. But I need to figure this out, and I'm actually, I mean, I would be willing to. I I don't know how that works too on Facebook, just to have a page like for the book. Um, because I think you have to have like your regular account and that has to be active, and then you can do like something like a business account. But I don't know. Like I'm just really not there. Okay, so anyway, that was our first article. Let's go to our next article. Our next article is from Zero Hedge, and this one is. Let me bring it up here. Dun, 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 dun. All right. YouTube hides dislikes following mass downvoting of Biden administration video. Okay, so from a face, this is authored by Paul Joseph Watson via the Summit News, but apparently Tyler Durden has decided to jump in on this and write this as his own. I don't know, man. It's kind of not the way it's done, right? To just take somebody's article and like just rebadge it as your own and post it. There's a lot of bad things that can happen with that, right? So that's interesting. So anyway, let's look at, again, we're just analyzing this from face validity, and this is the first time, like first show I'm doing this. So I went through a lot of websites and was trying to find different examples. And I think I'll get better at this. And please, like, email me or post down below in the comments of say like, hey, like, how about this? So face validity, what we're trying to do here is to look at a headline and then see one, if it makes sense. Again, it's that thermometer, and then also try to think one step beyond of what's really what's happening here. The face validity. It's like when I was throwing out the opening pitch at a baseball game up in Minnesota, right? Back in this ball right here, that I threw out on July 31st, 2019. And when I got up there in the first, and before I threw it out, they just said, off the mic, they're like, "Hey, just don't say anything bad about our sponsors." Okay, yeah, I got it. I'm not gonna sell you down the river here by just trashing your sponsors before I throw the pitch out. but but then you're like, well, why in the world would you tell me that? Like, so anyway, YouTube hides dislikes following mass vote. So I can still see it. Oh my god, I got 16 dislikes. Come on, don't do that to me. It's still my birthday week. No, I got 16 thumbs up. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for the thumbs up for the show. Um, so YouTube has announced that it will hide dislikes from videos to curb creator harassment, with critics pointing out that this is merely a way of removing the huge amounts of downvotes on videos posted by the Biden administration. So face validity. Let's think about this and let me know what you think on this. Um, my thought is face validity is probably there's probably a couple things happening here. One is any government video that is being posted right now about what is happening, whether it's hey, your Thanksgiving is going to be a little bit less expensive for carrots this year, and not not counting that everything else has gone up and double what it was a year ago, or I don't know, stuff like that. So this whole thing of getting ratioed and stuff like that is probably a part of that. I don't think it's due to necessarily the administration, though, on this, right? I don't think that's what's driving this. So the face validity on this, I've been watching litigation that's been coming out for. Well, what did we see, right? What did we see? The YouTube whistleblower, right? Which was all pretty weird. That seemed pretty damn rehearsed for someone who just comes out as a whistleblower. Now we haven't heard anything about this person for what I don't we haven't seen her on the news. We haven't heard anything about her for quite a while after she comes out. No, these studies that we've done internally here at YouTube that I downloaded to a thumb drive, and so we tend to promote the videos which get more likes, but people feel worse about them. Well, anyway, I think what's happening here is there's this ramping up of litigation where people are bringing harm to themselves, right? Depression, anxiety, and things like that, and they're saying that this is a reason for it. And I've seen this also in school litigation, with families and things like that, where they post to social media and they'll say, this person was bullied through social media, or they went in intentionally, these dislikes. There was something out there too, where there was a girl, I think, who got like 100 thumbs down or whatever the hell it was on Instagram stuff, and it went to this deep depression and all that, and it had taken a photo of herself, and it was and it was an appropriate photo, but it was for homecoming or prom or whatever it was, and then hey, let me know what you think about it, thumbs up, and apparently her friends, but other people just went in and then just bombed it and put it down. And I think what's happening here is you're opening up this opportunity for litigation, and here would be the angle on the litigation. It'd be saying, that this is having an impact on kids, right? We just saw these studies come out from this person from YouTube, this whistleblower and stuff like that. Well, you don't have ways to handle this, right? You have nothing built into your system of saying, hey, if you feel anxious or depressed, or you're feeling without value because you've had downvotes on your site, so then here's how we'll support you, or we'll use downvotes to educate, or maybe it could be a downvote, and then it could be because the video was choppy, because Doc's waving his hands and he's all crazy, and I'd like it when someone is more static in the show, or it's the content or something. But instead of getting into all of that and opening up to the litigation, because there are communities now, for example, which have anti-bullying laws just in the community, not in schools. They have those already in schools, but in the communities. So a parent comes in and they're saying, yeah, bullied, and whenever this becomes evidence, this is social media, the downvotes, the things like that. So they don't want to deal with this, right? It's a complete mess. So that's why they're taking it away. I don't think it is. I think it would have happened regardless of the administration. So face validity is, I think what happened is this is the follow up from the Facebook whistleblower, which again seemed pretty well organized for someone to come out and saying, we've done a lot of these internal studies, and kids, they it's so manipulated, right? Of what you get, see, but um, that's why I think this is gone. What are your thoughts here, you guys? Let me go over here. Do you think it's we already seen comments be removed from videos or people being banned for expression? Yeah. So, um, okay, that's from Carl. Almost all comments get banned, at least where I looked. I don't know. I guess maybe I mean, I've been getting some comments. I appreciate those. But yeah, anti-bullying practices seem to make bullies. Isn't that weird? Carl wrote. Sast wrote, a solid 10% of the interest population are perpetually, I think, internet are anger trolls, dislikes, or just the cost of doing business. Sass, you're right on, right? Like um, some of the, um, you know, most popular channels that I watch, right, just get a certain percentage of downlikes because yeah, people just they get jealous of people's success. And so what they're saying too, right, on YouTube is they're saying, well, this disproportionately affects smaller producers. So if you already have established, following and $500,000 or 500,000 viewers and stuff like that, and you do a show and it's 20,000 thumbs up and 2,000 down, not going to probably be a big thing. But if you're like starting out, this can impact you. But so I think this whole thing is it's in the original intent, right, is trying to steer people, like if it's a review, like if somebody does a review of a pair of shoes or something like that, and hey, like I ran in these Hokas and whatever, and here's what I think, and it's like 11 thumbs up and 45 thumbs down. I'm not going to view that, right? Because I'm guessing that it probably doesn't have much value and things like that. So this is so face validity one of why this is probably happening. I don't think it's the Biden stuff. Two is we're probably getting to a point where it's just general affirmation. You're just going to have the thumbs up buttons, and the only critical kind of discourse might happen in the comments. So, but if you're, oh, it's our school. So we always get these several notifications throughout the day on all kinds of stuff going on. So let us go over here. So that's what's going on. And to say like face validity, to say, oh, this is people being angry toward an administration, and this is probably contributing to driving down the administration's popularity. I don't care what administration really it is. I don't think that's accurate. I don't think that's why they're doing this. This is a move to protect their legal backside, or at least to make it appear that they have done things to be proactive before this really hits. So here's our last article, and let me bring this one up. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, whoa. Commentary here. This is from the Western Journal. Roads are racist. Buttigieg says racism literally built into roads, so they must be destroyed and rebuilt. So, and let's get down to this. So this is where on Monday, Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg clearly said that some of our roads are indeed racist. In a news conference to discuss the infrastructure bill, one reporter asked Buttigieg about the racism in American roadways, what had to be done. And also, can you give us the construct of how you will deconstruct the racism that's built into roadways, as you talked to the griot earlier when you broke down that information? So here's a quote. I'm still surprised that some people were surprised when I pointed out the fact that if a highway was built for the purpose of dividing a white and black neighborhood, or if an underpass was constructed that a bus carrying mostly black and Puerto Rican kids to a beach, or it would have been a New Yorker designed too low for it to pass by. Okay. So, all right. Let's take a face validity at this and put comments in, please. Let me see what's going on. So check out Ball's Bluff too. Hey, all right. Yeah, I'll come back to comments after this one, but okay. So roads are racist, and so the face validity on this is this is polarizing, right? This isn't meant to um, this is meant to frame the infrastructure bill as a way to resolve a social construct problem versus, hey, we have entropy of our systems, right? Our bridges rust, they fall apart, our asphalt gets potholes, um, concrete cracks, things like that. Entropy of systems, which is the way I would have gone at this, right? But to say this is a social construct that now doing this, so sure. I mean, like, what was it like when Detroit was divided by the what? Forget the road that went through. Um, some of that I would say was there. Some of this was just like the planning that was done at the time. I mean, think about like how Houston was developed, and then they keep trying to add roads and insufficient and the highway interstate bills and stuff like that. I don't think I this is a huge overreach, right, of saying that roads are racist. And yeah, so do you have this with the underpass? Did anybody deliberately build this? Like we have in my town when we moved here, there was an underpass that I don't know if you could get a bus under it, a train underpass. I mean, this used to be a train hub in the 1850s and stuff like that, and um, it was just the way that it was. They had to like reconstruct it, and I so vehicles were different. This To say that this is intentional as a face validity seems pretty crazy, right? That why wouldn't you do this for fire trucks, right? Or um, utility vehicles and semis and stuff like that, like, right? So that why why you're saying a bus, and a bus isn't as high as that, and so to come in and to make that statement, um, from a face validity standpoint, this doesn't hold water with me. um, I don't see that. And again, like, you have you have infrastructure that was also, you have to match it to what was the population and density of these towns and how they kind of grew up around these things at that time. So now if you look at them, you can say, yeah, these are insufficient, or maybe they're because they were earlier built in some neighborhoods and things have come out like newer construction, yes, would take advantages of newer designs and maybe easier access. But um, so what is being done here, right, is the framing through face validity. We recognize this, of saying we should be addressing this as entropy. Entropy is just, again, all systems wear out over time. People wear out over time. We get old, bones get creaky, stuff like that. Boats get rusty, cars get rusty, bridges, things. So if you do that, though, why would you, at face validity, why wouldn't you say, like, we're fixing things that have been ignored by previous administrations, right? Like, we are the ones that are finally taking this on. Well, if you do that, like, previous administrations also include your Democratic administrations, in addition with Republican. But so then you can look and say, well, why wasn't this during an 8 years of an Obama administration? Like, why wasn't this addressed? Like, we had the 2008 era American Recovery Act, which put a lot of money into like schools and things like that. But I mean, there wasn't an infrastructure part of that. So I think it's a diversion, right, to try to not put this back on, well, why wasn't this done by other administrations? And it seems like so much of what is being talked about is being framed through an equity discussion. Like I don't. This is like whoa. I mean, this is pretty. It just kind of jumps off the page at me. But again, so face validity. I think it again positions right. If you're looking at this, it positions the administration as working on a social construct versus working on an entropy or a kind of this mechanical construct of we are going to become more cutting edge and we'll be able to deliver goods and services to everybody, right? But that's kind of not as that's not as appealing in how you're trying to put this out there. Um, so anyway, I mean, let me know your take on that. But so it is SAST. Pete is criminally insane. So yeah, I have a couple friends who live in South Bend, Indiana, and they're like, "Holy smokes!" Like the whole time that he was here, this place like was already sketchy, and it became much more sketchy. So I, so again, our face validity, right? So this is what we see, but if other people are reading this, they're they're taking just from this headline and this example, this again, one example, and that's the same strategy that the National School Board used. Is here was an example of someone who was yelling at a school board meeting or things like that, which they did. They gave like a couple examples from thousands and thousands of meetings, pull out a few. You're trying to convey this urgency of why this has, and I don't know why the entropy angle wouldn't work here. Like I just don't. To me, it would, and to me, it's much more when you use visuals, right? So you go out as me, as what Secretary of Transportation Pete, and you go on this tour for 3-4 weeks, right? And you're going to bridges and roads and I don't know dams and whatever it is that is going to be infrastructure in this bill, and you do a video thing. You interview a few people about it, interview people where they had to shut down this bridge and now they have to drive like further around it because it's not, load bearing anymore. And you get their stories and maybe, you also have a couple examples of like, here's where, we have invested in this and here's a difference that's made. I think everybody would relate to that. Like, I think that would be there for everybody. It's tangible and things like this, where here you're getting in these abstract concepts. And I guess I'll stop on that, but yeah, people who would take this as a face validity, I do not believe that, infrastructure for the most part was built, in this regard. I mean, it was built to transport goods and people, and largely goods. So, and actually, let me just go back here. And if you go to, the interstate system, it was meant for, wartime to be able to transport military goods. And then when I vacation and go up to Superior and take Highway, I think 53, there's long stretches of that were built, I think like in the 60s. So you could land bombers and aircraft on the highway. So actually you can see like it was just designed for that. And they have some of the Air Force bases like Fort McCoy up there and Camp Douglas, stuff like that. But so anyway, and this is the thing where like, I think you mentioned it, Carl, like who's going to call someone out on this? Because if you call out this article, I'm just calling out of a face validity is I think the entropy is the reason, right? It's not because these were built; they have to be torn down, destroyed, and rebuilt now to fit a social construct. It's just they're not equipped or never, were built to accommodate the equipment that we have today, the size of the things. Like in my town, for example, it was a big issue because the fire engine, the ladder truck, until they replaced this rail bridge, and it couldn't go under the bridge, so they would have to drive around if the ladder truck was to get to the other side of town. So, but let's get back. Let's get back. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, I am going to try to bring up one more here. Let's see. Cool. I don't know if this is working or not. I think it did. All right. Well, that's good news. All right. I'm going to I can increase the size of this one. Well, oh. All right. This is going to be our last one. I took this drag off of Twitter last night, and there were a couple of people here that follow me who posted to this. So, yeah, this was in Twitter last night. And here it is. Just got word that the federal government is sending letters to trucking companies telling them what they're allowed to haul. This is from, and somebody posted this, it wasn't me. Guess what's on the list that you can't haul? Groceries. Hearing word that Kroger Foods, is not letting the trucks leave the parking lot with loads. So this thing had, as you can see, 117 likes, 58 retweets, 37 comments. And this morning it had even more. But what was happening? So let's look at, it's face validity, right? This comes across to your timeline or something like that, or somebody shares it to you, like, oh my God, look at this. So from a face validity standpoint, what would you do on this? Like, what would any of us do? If we really wanted to get down into it, a few things is when you check your local stores, right? And see if deliveries are coming in. You could talk to people that who are truck drivers, right? And say, have you heard anything about this? So what was happening? And there's something called the Military Defense Act, and it's still in place. And you probably remember when President Trump said, we're going to have our factories build, ventilators and masks and things like that, and put them kind of into this almost wartime production thing. And when that's done, there can be certain things that are then controlled at a federal level under the state of emergency. But which Joe Dolio had pointed out in a post to this. So Joe wasn't endorsing this. He's just saying there's a capability, but there's probably a misinterpretation. Now, what was happening? I read through these posts, and about 80% of them, people were saying this isn't true. Like, I can see there's a Kroger distribution center 2 blocks away, and I've been watching it, and trucks are coming in and out. My brother-in-law is an over-the-road trucker. He doesn't know anything about this. I talked to my grocery store when I was there today, and so over the next 10, 12 hours, the people were face validity checking this, and which was good, right? Because and they're also searching the news on this. It's not on their local news, because this would be on the local news, right? Or you'd see signs up at the store at your groceries, that, hey, we're not getting certain deliveries right now. You'd see that as you're going through this. I mean, this would show up really fast, right? I mean, if you shut down grocery deliveries, especially to Kroger, and you'd have to think other companies are getting this to trucking companies. So, but none of this was confirmed. The other thing is, you saw people posting and saying, post a link to the source, post a link to the source, post a link to the source. And, people weren't doing that, whether it was an article, whether it was a picture of the memo or things like that. So quickly, the face validity on this fell apart, right? So the face validity, would have you think, well, you can't do this. The amount of what, first of all, this would be intentfully harmful. And I guess other people could argue other things have been intentfully harmful, but why would you do this? And you also, all of the stores have been open. The truckers have been able to overload their trucks and stuff like that. The big stores have been making money. So So again, this is something that got, from a face validity standpoint, it didn't sit well with people, and then they dug into it. And not only did they say, "Oh, this is garbage" or whatever, like post the source. They're like, "I'm talking to this what over the road trucker." Then they start to get details in it. I've seen this at the store, like my own observations at the. So like, yes, like this was a very hopeful article, or not article, but a hopeful post. I was like, good job, people. Like, this is what you need to do. You need to call out some of this stuff. And but imagine, what if suddenly Twitter is like, oh, like on, you can have an option, you can post stuff. And you already can do this, right? But and no one can comment. Like they could retweet it, I guess, or they could retweet without it. I mean, at what point are people going to just be able to put things out there that it'll make it more difficult for us who are exercising face validity to then challenge it? Um, or if we challenge it, we have to challenge it in our own threads or something like that. But this is, now imagine though, somebody reads this and they freak out. What do? They, if they don't do face validity check, they're like, I'm going to the store. Like I'm loading up on anything I can get right now, because like if this is happening, I don't want to be the last one there. So they take off and they load up on, or they call other people, or they call their relatives, or they start sharing this on social media and get other people freaked out. So, and this was debunked. None of this is happening. So here we go. Good. Um, Stop screen. I have one more, and then we'll go into the photos here. So here we go. Here we go. Dun, dun, dun. Once I can figure out this Google Drive thing, this will be a little bit nicer. So, all right, I'm going to bring this photo up, and we'll get over to the chat. So, there we go. All right. So I was busy, kind of Sunday, Monday, Tuesday into Wednesday. Sunday was my birthday, so I didn't do too much on that day. But what you're looking at here, remember in Indiana Jones, Last Crusade, when he goes up to Petra, he's going through the rock, and then suddenly Petra's all carved out there where the Holy Grail is. This is like walking through the walls of Petra, and then like when you get up toward the window, which looks out onto my neighbor's porch. But this is my basement, so this is my fireplace room. So actually, like where I would be standing taking this picture would be not fireplace, be furnace, be kind of close to furnace. But I heat my house with wood, but furnace is there too, and if needed, stuff like that. But this is 14 cords of firewood, oak. So all hauled with a canvas sack. So gets delivered at my house, and I'm the smallest customer from the dude. Yeah, well, it's him and his kids that who have this business where they deliver firewood to pizza chains down, and there's a metro area not too far from me, and they do exclusive delivery. So they're just like giving, for these wood fired pizzas. And then they have a couple residential customers. And the thing is, like, I have to keep up a pretty high order with them to stay relevant. I'm pretty sure they might still deliver, like, if I lowered, but so it's one of these tricky things. Like in my area, to get, this is all great split oak. I mean, clean wood, stuff like that. So it's a value of me, and it's a value to do this, to make sure that I keep up this order. But yeah, this is crazy. So let me give you another angle of this. And I had to calculate it, like how many thousands of pounds of wood that I carried down over those over those 3 days. I'm like, God, that was just that was nuts. I used to do that all in a day. which was just insane to kind of think about that. But so let me bring this back up. So okay, so this is another angle, and so this firewood back here is actually most of this is from last year, and then it starts in over here is like all of the new stuff, and I crisscross it like up to like 4 feet, so it's real stable stuff like that. But some kindling and things like this. But this is a big room, and like most of it now is just filled with wood, and it's filled up to within about 6 inches of the floor joist. So and then I intend to burn all of this out this year, so it's pretty wild. But yeah, so and part of this, is face validity for me. The face validity of this is I see prices going up for natural gas, and I want to be able to have plenty of firewood to heat my house and offset that. So that is, that's one of the reasons why I did that. And also, I was the winner in Old Humble Distilleries drawing, and dun, 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 this bottle of whiskey arrived at the house. So from Old Humble, which is a distillery in Old Humble, Texas. Yeah, it's this really neat artisan type bottle, and this is packed really well. But yeah, so my it was kind of weird because my 11-year-old daughter was outside, and then the UPS guy like gave the package to her, and then she comes in and she says, "Hey, the UPS guy gave me this for you." I'm like, "What is it?" I'm like, "Oh my goodness, it's a bottle of whiskey." So you just gave my 11-year-old daughter a bottle of whiskey. What's up with you? Um, but yeah, so Old Humble Distilling. So Joe down there, and who has a podcast. Um, so anyway, yeah, we just kind of picked apart a few things here for face validity. Now let's go back over to the chat room. So a few things. Let me do this and dun, 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 dun. Subscribe and thumbs up. Dun, 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 to Doc a Solid. Dun, 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 dun. If you haven't subscribed yet, dun, 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 please subscribe and tell your friends and tell your friends to tell their friends to subscribe. Dun, dun, dun. So, and a shout out here. So smash that like button. Thank you so much for doing that. I appreciate it. And comments below. If you think of things and you're like, hey, like here's an article or for face validity, for next week's show, here's some ideas. Like, absolutely go for it. That helps me. So this is, and then I'm going to get back to comments here. This is the most honest book written about the $3 billion, ouch, school safety industry. It also hurts you if it hits you, but so 200 pages and $30, but it's on Amazon, Barnes Noble, places that sell books, right? Like somebody asked me, like, where can I get the book? I'm like, places that sell books. I think they'll probably set you up with it, but it's in hundreds of libraries. And it was interesting. I was talking to some lawyers at a major university who had seen a piece that I did on abeyance agreements. And they were contacting me and they were asking some questions, and I was looking and I can tell where the book is in some places, like through my publisher. And I said, yeah, I kind of wrote about this whole concept and abeyance agreements, stuff like that in my book. And they're like, oh, what about that? I said, and by the way, it's like in your library, like in your right there on campus. Like I was just looked, it's in there. And so you can go check with your library. So that was kind of cool. Like, check your library. But so anyway, yeah, if you're a parent, please consider this book, or consider it from your library if they can get it for you, or if you order it. But there's the real depiction of what happens when schools are trying to promote a safe environment, and usually it's fortification based. Got some crazy things going on. People who are safety experts, well, they're just really vendors who come in and don't have any background for the most part. I mean, there are some, but then there's I have a terrific section in there about, just can you overplan for things? And is it a mistake to overplan for things? Like on 9/11 in New York City, lower Manhattan, 500,000 people were evacuated in 9 hours by boat. And the only command was from Admiral Lloyd saying, "Hey, like if you have a boat, come down here and get people out." People figured it out. They made the system, and after 9 hours, poof, it's gone. Nobody was killed. Nobody was injured. So, and also this real risk of we're losing experiences for kids. So I wrote about a school district outside of Cleveland a couple of years ago, and they shut down their eighth grade field trip to Washington D.C. Like it's a couple of years ago, because they said, "Oh, it's too dangerous for the kids like to go to D.C." And it's like, whoa! So if you live next to Cleveland, for God's sakes, it's too dangerous to go to D.C. But then what are you doing? Like, what's the message you're sending? The environment, the world's all scary, and you're not getting kids exposure to that. And it's not like you're going to DC at 3 a.m, but you can't go to your nation's capital. So but it is an eye-opening read. And again, if you are a parent, or know somebody who is a parent, and this is, again, it's a book that is written to you. It's written to you. It's so it's not this all technical, stuff. It's where I'm speaking directly to you. And by the way, there's a picture of me that you only see in this book. That is right there. So that is me and police. Dun, dun, dun. And yeah, when I was doing active shooter and intruder drills, and then too, like I break it down into saying, hey, if you're going to do this, and I teach these in legal class too, I'm saying if you do these, like there's a right way to do these and a wrong way to do these, and a lot of people kind of do them the wrong way, which is running up and down, firing off fake rounds, and trying to kick in doors, and terrifying kids, and stuff like that. So, and school VAERS, rethinking school safety in America. So let's get over to the chat here. And so Dark wrote, Carl, it's too funny. The moment they start to feel themselves wavering on their own beliefs, it's game over. They either have a come to Jesus moment or flip out emotionally. Yeah, it's a good point, Dark. I mean, because again, people we interact with, you don't know sometimes, and even like family members, right? Like how close they are to flipping out, especially face validity. If you challenge people on face validity and try to do that, so usually you can kind of coach people. You can use words like "I observed," and the more you use it, the more they start to kind of use it to think about it. But if that's what you use. Carl's like, "Be right back." All right, so at DLD after dark, I call them TV watchers. So that's too many. So yeah, so there's so many people who just like, I'll tell you everything that's going on in my area. Well, how'd you find out? Well, I watched the news this morning. I'm like, well, that's why in Velocity of Information you have a member check network, and for the most part, the news is pretty useless, right? I mean, because it's manipulated to a market. It's based upon advertising. It's beholden to advertising, and it's short. I mean, you're not going to learn about anything in really 60 or 90 seconds, which is your average spot for a story. I think when Velocity, when School of VAERS came out, and I was on TV, and I was on like public radio and stuff. I mean, like it was a 2-minute slot. Like that was like it absolutely max. So, you're trying to learn about safety systems, and you're trying to learn about, why it doesn't make sense to put an SRO in every school building, 2,200 in Wisconsin, including a school that's on an island. It's a hard narrative to get into in 120 seconds, but so true. Carl wrote to DLD. I find that people who are presented objective information either have a discussion or they freak out, nothing in between. So Carl, you're right on. And this is something where I think when you read the Velocity of Information, it will help you with some a few things. One, it'll help you to recognize when people are kind of in this denial or flip out, or also this cognitive offloading. You're like, I just don't, I'll get my information from whatever. Like, I know if I can go into my web search and find like this one news site, they'll tell me everything. But You can work with people to help them to observe. If you just say, like, what did you observe when you went to the store today, like on the shelves, or what did you observe as you're driving through the neighborhood, or what do you um, so I have a story that I wrote about in the velocity of information, and it was when the schools, or not schools, the school shut down, right? Back in March of 2020, our state issued, our governor said all schools are shutting down, and it's going to be like a 2 week thing, and then they're done for the rest of the year because of the the virus. My daughter at the time was still in elementary school, and she was getting like from her friends, they're like sending her emails and stuff and saying, hey, they're ripping out the playground in town, and all this other stuff, all this bad stuff was happening. And of course, like, we weren't taking her along anywhere because at that time no one really knew what was going on. You saw videos of people like passing over or falling down in streets in China, stuff like that. So like her friends couldn't come over. We weren't letting her bike around the neighborhood, like you bike on her driveway and stuff like that. And so like her world just shrunk, and she was getting very anxious and saying, they're tearing out the playground and stuff like this. And so um, after a while, it didn't take long, a couple days, and I'm like, this, here's the deal. Like, for you, you're 9 years old. I mean, this is a big part of your life. I mean, so like a year of a 9-year-old, that's over 10% of their life. A year for me, that's 2% of my life. So this, when you take something like this, for me, like, I can pattern, I can kind of see things, like it doesn't affect me as much as it affects a younger person necessarily. But so I said, here's the deal, we're going to road trip. So I got my video camera, the tripod, and I said, where do you want to go? You already talked about, they're telling you the park is being ripped out, and your schools, and Walmart and stuff like this. So I said, let's go visit these places. Let's see what's going on, and we'll video record, like, like a news. We'll do our own little news show on this. And so we did. We did 13 recordings over, I think, 4 months. I wrote about this in the book, so I have all of these, and we never made them public. Right? This isn't for public consumption. This was just to teach her a few things. But again, you can generalize this to other people, like, and especially if you're a parent, like, this is really important with kids. She's again kind of in this whirlpool, like, all the information is bad, and nothing new is happening, for her. Because kids, every time they have something new that kind of moves them on, is transitory, like new experiences. That's why time kind of moves fast when you're a kid, right? Because you have all these new experiences. But so we're out, and we went to the playground, and it had this yellow tape around it, and police tape and stuff like that. I've got all these pictures, and I've got one of them that's in the book. But we looked, and there was a big pile of sand on the one side of it. And so you could kind of see, like, if somebody drove past it, where maybe you think it's being torn up. But we looked, and I'm like, they're putting in a volleyball court. Like, that's why that sand is over there. So I don't think they're probably working on it now, but that's why the sand's there. There's gonna be a volleyball. So that's actually a good thing, right? So, she's doing her reporting. Today is whatever date. So it's metadata too, like teaching people metadata. And I did it, with my daughter, but you can do this with your kids, or do this with your relatives or your friends or other people, and say, okay, what day is it? Where are you at? What are you observing when you're around here, as far as, like, um, is what's the weather like? How is this different than the last time that you were here? How do you expect it to be the next time you are here? Right. So you just say those types of things. So she does, her little reporter type thing, and set the camera up. And these are short. We would take a minute or two at each location. So we did there. We went up to her school. We went, and the sign on the door and all of that stuff, and things like that, of, hey, no one closed down, all this stuff. We went to the Walmart parking lot. We went to a bank that was next door to that. It was closed as a Sunday, and we went in their parking lot, and we set up the tripod so you could see the Walmart parking lot. And we saw, like, people were all lined up outside and going into the store in one entrance. So yeah, so it's like, what's the difference? Well, they got one entrance, the other one's closed down. Okay. And why do you think that is? And so she's like, so they can keep track of who's coming in the store. I'm like, Yeah, yeah, and I said, "You know, they're kinda spaced apart there," and I was shopping, like, so I knew, so I was, like, telling her the experience. I said, "They have X's they put down on the ground, they want people to stay, but people are still coming in and out. So the store is still functioning, right? It's just it's a different procedure, so it's a little different for people, but look down here, like, there's people in the parking lot and cars, stuff like that, just as we had always kind of seen." We went to the Armory in town, which isn't a place like I ever kind of hang out with my kids. It's on the edge of town, but we went to the Armory, which was kind of a dad thing, like because I want to see what the hell's going on over here, like because I had people telling me that they're like, oh, there's like Apache helicopters that have landed at the Armory. Like my neighbor was telling me this, and there's like pallets of stuff like on the runway and things like that. And he's like, so I don't know what's going on. I'm like, I guess so. I mean, pretty small runway next to where the Armory is, but um, so we went there, and we again, you can't like be on the property, so we're next to it. But I've got the camera, and I'm like, oh, there's like 4 cars in the parking lot, and like 2 Humvees, which are always there, and that was it. I mean, there wasn't anything different at the. So she's then has the camera, and she's like, oh, Dad, like uh, gotta move back a little bit so I can kind of get the thing. I should move the camera like left and right and things like that. And I'm reporting like, hey, like back here is the our armory in town, and it looks like we have 4 vehicles in here today, like 3 cars and a truck, and here's a couple Humvees, but yeah, here's the runway and stuff like that for the planes, and there's nothing on it. And so and there was a time though, like we went out there and it was like really busy, but then like another time it wasn't very busy. But so all of these things. But for her then, we would come home and we would we'd edit these videos, right? So we would do a little intro on it that we had like the date and the heading, and then like every time we went to a place we do like a little overlay of like, here was the name of the where we were at, and here was and the thing was, as she did more of these, she got better. It was moving her through time. It was transitory, right? And she was able to compare and contrast and then predict, and she's like, oh, it's been like this way for like 4 days, like 4 times we went to the school, really nothing different. There's a sign in the door and a couple cars in the parking lot. So what do you predict? What do you think is going to be there when we go there this time? I think probably the same thing. We went up to the hospital, right? And we went into the hospital parking lot and said, we've been to the hospital before for checkups and things like that, so anything you kind of see different here today? No, no, it kind of seems like the same to me. And so those are so valuable, right, for kids, but also just for friends and family and parents. Like I said, the armory thing, I had a neighbor who made it sound like it was Red Dawn, for God's sakes, like, and I'm trying to think, how in the hell are they dropping in Apache helicopters like in our, and I'm like, why does it even make sense from face validity? Because, there are other larger airports close to us. And even like a neighboring community that's 15 miles away has a much larger airport. I mean, ours is like a small crop duster type airport that is right also then adjacent to the armory. So like from a again a face validity standpoint, I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And maybe I don't know what he saw, or maybe there was a helicopter there for some reason, but it certainly wasn't this big staging area. It wasn't like you could look at this and say, ooh, like there's something going on here. Like there's a lot of pallets, like maybe they're getting ready to distribute stuff. I don't know. But it wasn't that way. So, but God, and that's a great chapter in the book. It's not a very long chapter. And again, I've got one of the pictures, that she took when we were out of a playground that's, kind of in our neighborhood, and it's got the tape around it and all of that stuff, the police tape. But I think had we not done that for face validity, and again, nobody talks about this, right? There aren't any educators, there aren't any keynotes in education. And I talked with my my school leaders classes, and I said, you should be talking about this now with parents. And this is the type of thing we said, the nightly news and all of this stuff where there should be a 30-minute special right? Like how to talk to your kids during uncertain times. And to give an example like this and say, hey, you can go out and do this. Like, like we weren't close to, coming up to people doing this. We're not trying to interview. All of the video we have, I mean, people are very far away. It's not like you're invading their space and things like that. And, typically, of course, we're just trying to record like, structures and things like that. But, and the value of teaching metadata to people. Don't just, don't just stand there and take a video. I mean, and also, yeah. So what do you see? What's different? And how do you feel? Um, and things like that. And make people help people to reflect. Like, say, oh, I feel anxious about this, or I feel less anxious, or I feel like I understand this now. And you kind of talk through that. And some of that we would overlay on the video when we would do editing. And then we'd all watch it as a family. Like this was like her production, right? So this was like her big thing. And so also like when things had kind of come to a halt for her with school and things like that, suddenly she becomes this producer of this mini documentary series of, and I totally sold it as I said, this is a once in a lifetime thing, So when you're older, like this will be kind of a cool thing to look back at when you were doing this reporting thing. And then I knew I could write about it in the book. And then I also knew each time we did this, it would make her more confident that what the face validity was, or if her friends are all keyed up and they're telling her, like elementary girls stuff too, and this is going on, this is going on, this is going on. And she's like, I was just there, and what I observed, nope. And then maybe like her friends can say, well, this is what she observed. Like she was there with her dad, and they were, checking out this, the playground or the Walmart or the gas station or whatever it was. That was another thing that, gas is all sold out. I was like, no, I think one of the pumps had like a bag over it, like they were out of like super unleaded or something like. So let's go over here in the chat. DLD After Dark. I find that people who are presented objective. I talked about that. Thanks, Carl. Love the Tree ribeye. All pro. Dark. It's almost impossible. Like people think that the stronger their emotional response, the more virtuous they are. In reality, they're just wrong. Louder. Carl, you're right on. Right. And we know that psychologically people will tend to double down versus admit that they are wrong, or to say like, my information is incomplete, which is something like I'll say more often than not. So in those cases, I think it's and again, these are people you might interact with on a very regular basis. These could be family members, coworkers, these, people in your community. So you don't want to sever those relationships and damage. And one of the things I was talking about with a good friend of mine who was just about to kind of go off on a coworker, we just hammer them on saying that what you're saying and all this stuff is wrong. Like your face validity is just garbage because you're just buying, you're taking in all these media headlines. And I talked to him and I said, I wouldn't do that. Like, because, he's telling me more. And I said, I think this person just is really scared. They're really afraid. And just keep modeling that, what you're observing and saying, this is what I observe. And just kind of leave it at that kind of disconnect, from them. Don't try to push that angle with them because like, it's not really your job to do that. Right. I mean, this isn't a life and death thing of you getting this point across to them. And I said, at some point, they're probably going to realize with their own experiences of what's authentically happening in some of these situations. Right. So, and it's going to mean more to them. You have to preserve your relationship, your job. It's not the hammer and nail. Like that's the thing. And I found myself in that position a few times too. Like, and Joe Dolio in the chapter, I wrote about in the book, he really has a great point in there where they were getting some incomplete intelligence from someone who was new in their member check network, someone who was young, and pretty soon some people in the network want to boot this person out. Like, you can't be trusted. And Joe was like, nah, with that person, the case is like, this is just all new and overwhelming to them. So like, we need to coach them in things. And one of the statements was like, well, how good were you in your first pandemic? of informing people and reading situations. And it's like it's hard, right? So um, but yeah, I think it's the point of disengaging, or what they call it, dropping the rope in a tug of war with people, versus like I had a few situations where I'm sure I could have like just broke people like to the position of like what I officially observed, and I had the evidence and document. And but what benefit is that? Like as Dark, says, like there is a kindness during chaos. And I mean, a professionalism and empathy. It's not to validate someone's position or try to, I mean, if they're overtly less complete or wrong, but to not absolutely shatter them, right? Is important. It's almost like people think this. Oh, sorry. Um, they do this because people's opinions are visible. Alex, yep. If you have a system for viewers to show pleasure or displeasure, then you manipulate to hide the displeasure. It's called lying. So, Carl. Um, Carl wrote to Alex, it'll get worse because they will manipulate the data or simply make it up. So it'll look like it's lost credibility. So that's that's a challenge we face. And deep fakes, right? I wrote about in the Velocity of Information how Major League Baseball in 2020, right? They run in the seasons, but nobody's in the stands. Fox Sports did this thing on this where they were showing how they can just digitally put fans in the stands, and they could, and then he clicks, okay, so this number of Brewer fans, this number of Cubs fans, and they can be waving or cheering, and they can change up their appearance, and it's all AI generated. But when they showed this, and I'm watching this and saying, God, like if you didn't say anything to me, I would just think that's a ball game, right? I wouldn't tune into the audience and things like that. Like it was that well done, as long as you didn't specifically bring attention to it or like a hyper focus. I mean, like, so you could actually see these people. It would look like it was a regular, sunny day game at Wrigley Field. But I'm looking at this, and I was talking to Joe Dolio too. And again, I wrote about it in the book, and I said, there's a really dark side to this, right? You could do this for a political rally. You could make it look like a lot of people were there, or like that not a lot of people were there, or for, if you're doing sales, right? If you're a store trying to manipulate people and say, get down here now, look at the crowd. Like we've got these great deals going on and there really isn't a crowd. And maybe you can just do this from an app. So, those types of things and deep fakes. But before we like lose all hope on this, we have member check networks. We have Brian in the Bronx who going out and walking and going into stores, telling you what's going on. We have Juan Brown who is, flying his plane over Oroville Dam and is telling you the height of the reservoir and, the situation and stuff like that. So I think what's going to happen is I think there's this thirst out there for valid information. And it's just tuning into that and finding those networks and maybe making that network yourself. That's when the people start to show up in person. Yep. Carl, are we already seeing comments be removed from videos or people being banned? So when I was on DLD's show the other night, I think like it wasn't too long into the show, and then DLD's like, hey, we just got notified. We got like the yellow thing on YouTube, so it's not monetized. My channel's not big enough to be monetized yet, but so yeah. And it's interesting how, right, these algorithms or someone like just posts and says, hey, check this video or whatever, and then it gets taken down. But at some point, like I think that's going to backfire. That's just not. There'll be alternative platforms or anti-bullying practices seem to make bullies. Isn't that weird? Carl wrote. SAST, a solid 10% of the interest population are perpetually angry and trolls. Yes. Perpetually outraged. Think it makes them morally valuable. It's the reversed. All Pro Lemonton. I think it's also videos about the disease that got tons of dislike. Yeah. So likely that was the case of having questions about different videos being out just to remove it. So yeah, certainly says to me. On the other hand, the mainstream media does not like that their propaganda gets massive dislikes. So dissent will be censored until morale improves. Oh God, that's funny, says to many. Sass, it's almost like people like being lied to. Crazy. I think people people like to follow a narrative, or they believe. So when I also wrote about the Gatlinburg fire back in Pigeon Forge, I think 2017, where people could see that the fire was happening, on the mountainside, right? They up on the top, and they saw it, and they're like, oh, like other people are aware of it. Fire department's obviously aware of it because everybody sees it. And then the fire, just took off one night, and 14 people ended up getting killed. And then they interviewed people afterwards, the National Institute of Standards and Measurements, I think. And I read the studies, and they would interview people, and people said, I just thought like the government would tell us if it was getting bad, like we should evacuate. And they never told us. But yeah, like most people said, yeah, I knew it wasn't right. Like face validity wasn't matching. Like you see this, you see like ash coming down the mountain and landing on your car and stuff like this. It's like, it's people waiting for somebody to tell them what to do. Remember, we went through this, guys. We went through in March of 2020. Everybody woke up in the morning, and you were either essential or non-essential. Everybody. Who would have thought that would happen? And pretty soon, it's essential, non-essential, and then I'm arguing in my actual, next safety doc that there's a new category which would be unessential. This is where your job's been automated, or and then also you aren't replacing that with some way that you're seeking agency and purpose. And so then what becomes of the unessential? So yeah, some pretty deep stuff. I thumb down every pro mandate video. Oh no. Don't. Okay. Alex, they're just spending the money so they can say that they need the budget. This whole thing of what trillions of dollars is so crazy, right? To think about this, trillions of dollars. How do you even things? I think right, they've gotten so big that they don't even make sense anymore. We can't even conceptualize this. What is a trillion? What is $1 trillion? Or trillions of dollars in deficit? And I think that's right from a face validity standpoint. There's a realization that the difference between $20 trillion deficit and 50 trillion isn't really much, right? I mean, from how it actually impacts us, because we've gotten into this really obscure land where it's kind of runaway. And yeah, there'll be likely consequences for that, or which we're seeing with inflation, and people just more money's printed and fewer goods to go after. So hyperinflation, but we've kind of lost a big touch with reality. Face validity. The Secretary of Transportation is not qualified. So, and I think, couldn't you go through a lot of these administrations and look at who gets put into positions? It's like, not that they've had background in, any of these areas necessarily. They just kind of get appointed. So the merit, I don't even say it's meritocracy. It used to be small group theory is what they call it. Small group theory would say, you would pick somebody who was had expertise in whatever, in bringing them up in to these areas. So, but now it's just these kind of political appointees, and it's been that way for a while. But yeah, his statement should not be taken seriously. They call it a mandate, which is a legal term, but there's no law behind the mandate. Yeah, mandates. The other part for face validity is to watch terms like guidance. Guidance. Like I see that in those, documents from Attorney General Merrick and stuff, like guidance and recommendations. One thing, working with my school administration courses is if you see the word recommendation or guidance, it's basically saying it's completely optional to do this, right? It's right. It's not a mandate. So that's where people get messed up. I think roads are built while prioritizing wealthier neighborhoods. So you can say they are the classiest, not racist. That is false validity. So it's a good. I mean, thanks for posting that. Carl wrote, says to me, mandates and executive orders are not laws. One of the things too is like people just will impose and make decisions, um, and just see if anybody pushes back, right? And because people are so unused to strong decision makers, like people actually coming up and making a decision. There's a video I show in my administration class, and this video, there's this guy who has a ladder, just like a step ladder, right? It's kind of bigger step ladder, and he takes it around with him. This video is like from 3 or 4 years ago. It's really gets the point across though. He takes this ladder with him in some big city, and he's kind of regular dressed, and he goes into places, and he basically gets access to almost everything he wants. So he goes to a movie theater, and he's like, I'm here because like the one place I have to fix the sign, and so people are like, what, which, and he's like, what are some of the like names of the rooms? Are like, well, the Sierra room has like an exit. He's like, that's what I'm here for. And then it'll be like, okay, here you go. Getting into schools, getting onto um boats and ferries and stuff, carrying this ladder, and just and nobody, and then like going places and like pretending to inspect things like out in the public, like looking at somebody's awning or something like that at a business, and people are just like, okay, like this guy's got stuff to do here, he's associated, he's not wearing a vest or anything like neon vest. But it's a thing of if you, and that's one thing I talk about with in my classes, if you take that, like, I'm going to make this decision, um, a lot of times it just kind of works, for you, especially if you're competent. I guess that's the part. Um, Pete is, oh my goodness, sassed. Not here to change your mind, but I don't want to drive through West Bend anytime soon. Um, Carly's not crazy, he's programmed poorly. So I don't, I just, so let's look at, again, we're getting a lot of comments. The face validity of this in transportation, the scientific argument, right, would be entropy, or the deterioration of systems over time, the rust, right, the fatigue of, yeah, um, tarmacs of roads and things like that, weather related, age related, older technologies, wear, tear, things like that. Entropy everybody relates to. Everybody gets older. Everybody has entropy in their bodies. We have entropy in our houses. Your garage door springs, your appliances, floors wear out, things like that. I mean, that you have to attend to. Your roof on your house. So entropy makes sense, and also I think it's a scientific, like it's very objective. Like you can measure where something is. Like this is what it would be like this beam, if how much strength and how much weight it could be if it hadn't rusted out, or over time, or you know become more brittle, and here's what it can do now. So here's the change, here's the entropy, so now we have to restore. So like that makes a lot of sense, but I've never heard anyone talk about entropy in this infrastructure plan. Never. I've never heard that argument come out once. Not even an argument, it's just a scientific basis. And there's so much power in visually showing these things. Like we know that from I wrote about the Committee for National Morale and the Velocity of Information back in the 40s, where to prepare Americans in the mindset of war, like from people who'd be at home to soldiers, most of it was done in visuals, like these big murals and um, still movie clips. Why are we fighting, things like that. It wasn't done with narratives, and it wasn't done with trying to tell people, convince them with dialogue and stuff like that. It was visual. It was so. I mean, I always tell people, and if any of you have a connection, Carl, All Pro Lemon, and Sass, any of you guys have a connection, I would be the perfect cover story guy or the Spin City guy. Like, remember, was it I don't know what show it was with Michael J. Fox, where it was kind of just spinning the narratives on in the um, political show, or like the American President or whatever. But I mean, I would do it in a way that wouldn't be deceitful. It would just frame it like very objectively so people could understand it. And this, I'm going to do a show just on entropy, because I think this should be part of people's lexicon. Like, if you're watching this show, I want you to be able to know what entropy is. And not that I'm like, I have this major vocabulary, I know this stuff. Like, I didn't know what entropy was really until just a few years ago. And then I just started to see the word, and it was, it's kind of used more in the scientific community. But there is a social part of entropy too. Systems just fatigue over time, like just the way it is. But so you have to attend to them. And entropy came in big in my book with Robert Travis, the crab boat guy, because he said the boat would ice up, right? And if you didn't attend to it and take sledgehammers and knock the ice off the boat, the entropy would make the boat too heavy. You'd hit a wave and it would sink. And that happened to one of the crab boats like 3 years ago. So entropy is slow, and entropy can be kicked down the road, and it's not as flashy or catchy, but to me, like, this is the proper way to do this. And I think it undersells the intelligence of the of Americans, to just people in general, right? Because there's always a part of entropy they can understand. They can be, yeah, like the road in front of my house is kind of like all potholed and bad, or something like that. Or like, my roof or my car, now it's rusting out by a wheel well. Or, my remote control, like the buttons, stuff is kind of like all blurred off because it's been used so much. Entropy, these things have wear. And yet we don't, again, you start talking about that though, and you demystify it for people. It's a good thing. Carl, it's someone trying to two things together to maintain a narrative. It's like saying 2 + 2 = purple, because Thursday I like oranges. Whoa. I wasn't ready for that, Carl. There was a middling artist some years ago who viewed every little thing racial lens. It didn't go well. So infrastructure is a perfect example of the outhouse theory. Yeah. If you don't believe me, drive through Connecticut. Sast. And Sast, if I drove like you, that'd be 200 miles an hour. So, Atham, entropy, a thermodynamic quantity representing the unavailability of a system's thermal energy for conversion into mechanical work, often interpreted as the degree of disorder, randomness in the system. So, whoa. Yeah, you got it. So, entropy. So think of an engine, right? Engine runs in a traditional internal combustion engine. Entropy is like you're losing some energy through the heat that just radiates off the block, right? And that's not captured anywhere. So that's not available then to contribute to moving the car. Wow. A gradual decline, and gradual, right? Entropy is gradual. And that's why it doesn't have this sense of urgency, I think, although I think you can frame it like with urgency, with the proper messaging and transportation, stuff like that. But usually, yeah, it's gradual. We don't realize it until it's kind of like, oh my God, yeah, like I do have like my water's coming through the roof now because I've neglected or whatever, the gutters now, so the stuff is backing up. Or your own body, right? Like, I've been taking care of myself for eating well, and suddenly now I have some health issues which have been precipitated by entropy of not working out, not taking care of myself. Just age too. All prolimitin false. We'd be out of food in 3 days. So I can boil firewood. This story does not pass a validity test. I would seek other sources of info and maybe even go to the store myself. Yeah, good, Carl. So let's kind of get down here. There's a good friend, Elephant Armpit, or is it every comment is protected by First Amendment? Oh, wait, let me go back. Monopolies over social media have landed free speech in a strange spot. Do private companies have the right to censor comments from a desire to moderate the community? Right. So I don't know, right? And so this would take a Supreme Court ruling, and that seems to be kind of like, hey, hot potato, we're not going to hear this right now. So Yeah, we're really. That's a great point. Every comment protected by First Amendment. I don't have that sense, and I can tell you, I don't have that sense from personal experience with big tech. That every comment is protected by First Amendment. I've had some situations where that is not accurate. Um, so yeah. What? I have 2,400 people viewing me right now. How, how did this get set up? All right. Well, if everybody subscribes and likes to me right now, that would be absolutely awesome. So subscribe and thumbs up. So 1,000. Oh my God! Now I'm starting to tank here on the views. Hey, now they're going back up. So I don't know. Somebody just did me a solid here. I must have got tapped into the White House briefing with Jen Psaki. She accidentally was watching here the safety doc on the side, and she's like, "I'm going to make it live." So I'm like, "Hey, Jen." Um, so she's an interesting gal. Yeah. So safety doc, cognitive dissonance is so rampant right now. Look at the Great Resignation. It's a great point, Phil, out of Germany, right? Homeschool time was not able to post the last comment. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Homeschool time. I predicted the school situation where both students and teachers show up. The rate would be low. Why bother? And now we're seeing schools that are shutting down because they don't have enough staff, right? We can't have enough. We don't have enough staff. They have these things where we're not serving meals because our vendors force majeure. They can't bring us enough food. So, or they'll say we're not sure what you're going to get. Could be pizzas, or could be cans of applesauce. Whatever, you're going to have to make it. You're going to have to make it work. SAS too many. Maybe it's worthwhile to point out the executive orders only apply to the executive branch. Oh my goodness. Elephant armpit. Yeah, that ladder trick is hilarious, but eye-opening. Those videos on YouTube are entertaining. So yeah, I mean, check it out. It won't be hard to find. You can, just type in dude carrying ladder through town or something like that. But I talk about it like with school security, for example. Like if you have somebody come into your building, like I was pretty confident at any point I could go to any school and say, if I just did a little work off the website to try to find out who's in the building and who's the head of maintenance and stuff like that, I could come in as long as I was wearing semi-official clothing and stuff like that. And say, hey, I'm here to check out the HVAC system, or I'm from over from district office. I talked to Rolf, and they'll be like, okay, yeah, it's over here. Like what, cool. And no one would ask for your ID or anything like that. And that's not only that, you could probably get into virtually any place with that. I mean, it's absolutely crazy as long as you have this convincing, that I should be here. Like, what are you bothering me for? I had a job to do, buddy. It's kind of like Ghostbusters too, when they took the manhole off, and they're going down to check out the slime underneath the city. So, hey, by the way, for some reason, someone has gifted me a link over to some other things. 847 viewers. So hit thumbs up for the safety doc right now, so I know, because I'm stuck at 20, and with 877 people watching, we should be up above 20. And subscribe to the channel. Let's get over 1,000 subscribers. It's going to be wild. I said if I get over 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to sleep overnight in a cemetery and do a remote podcast from there. And yeah, so even if it's winter, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be respectful, right? But I will sleep overnight and do a live broadcast from a cemetery if I can get 1,000 subscribers. So yes, make it happen. Scare the bejesus out of me, but yeah, I'm willing to do it. So homeschool time said, I predicted the situation where teachers wouldn't show up. Yeah, homeschool time. So the competent man from our good friend over there at the Clary Show, hey, looks like the boys just arrived. Wow, yeah, I don't know. This is so at 3,000 viewers. So again, like I said, I think we just got tapped in by the White House. So yeah, they're just like, listen, this is probably like Pete was doing a thing on transportation. He's like, This whole thing with entropy that the doc is saying and everybody over here in the chat, homeschool times, it makes a hell of a lot more sense than like what I'm saying. So let's just tap in over here. Let's go with the entropy angle on this, and we'll just kind of drop it. We'll leave it at that. We're going with entropy for the bridges and roads and stuff like that. So, and Jen Saki's like, well, we'll circle around, come back to the Safety Doc podcast. So, um, wow. So this is pretty crazy. So it's great. Hang in there, guys. If you're watching, follow the show. Please subscribe. I will subscribe back. Please do a thumbs up. I appreciate that. Thumbs up and subscribe back. Very much. So yeah, I definitely appreciate that. Wow, this is so cool. This is so cool. Yeah, subscribe, smash that. Trying to get to 1,000, beyond 1,000, 10,000, whatever it is. Whoa, 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 that spiked. Whoa, don't forget to like and subscribe. He's a good man. Thank you, Alex. Thank you. And I appreciate it. Yeah, if you're subscribing, if you are liking the show, obviously, yeah, the Safety Doc podcast. More, you can check out over here at safetyphd.com for, other shows coming up. For the book, hey, the most honest book about the school safety industry, School of Errors. If you're a parent, get this. I wrote this. The new book, also the Velocity of Information, coming out on tax day, April 15th. Get that big refund. Go out, buy that book. But enough about that. So, hey, whitewash house, nobody with a brain. Oh, what they say. Yeah, they have been blah, 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 homeschool time. Wow. The Competent Man. How many books do you have published? I have one, Competent Man. This book came out in 2019, School of Errors, the most honest book about the school safety industry. There's hundreds of libraries all across the world, including Squamish, British Columbia, and Nigeria. So yeah, I'm talking right to you as a former school administrator. What's going on? You got kids in school. You want to read this book. This actually became its own PBS special. And then my second book, which is complete, it's being formatted now by the publisher, The Velocity of Information, Human Thinking During Chaotic Times, releases April 15th, 2022. And that rocks. I interviewed Larry Lawton, America's biggest jewel thief, and had one question for him. Like Larry was in the hole for like 4 years, and Larry's got this amazing YouTube channel, 1.33 million followers. And I asked Larry, I said, so Larry, like, how did you find out about 9/11? He's like, whoa, like nobody asked me that before. So that's a chapter. Crab boater, Robert Travis, his 2 tours on Alaskan crab boat, saying all of my bosses were killed. All of my bosses, man, like all 4 of my bosses were killed. You got these like refrigerator-sized chunks of ice flying across them. Like, how'd you maintain attention? How'd you find out what was happening? Like, you're out there, you don't have a cell phone, no one's giving you any information. Like, how do you figure out what's happening? Just crazy, crazy stuff. Brian in the Bronx, Juan Brown, interviewed Chuck Mack, University of Pittsburgh Med. Chuck was sharing with me on his phone. So he was taking screenshots and he said, hey, in Pittsburgh now, you can go to the newspaper and they'll show you like where COVID is in neighborhoods. Like you can, so like, light blue is like a little bit of COVID, like dark blue is a lot of it. And you could get down to the neighborhood. And so, we were talking about that from Face Validity. I'm like, so what does this mean? Does this mean you shouldn't drive there? You don't deliver pizza there? If you're a realtor, you can't go there? Is there any signage of saying, hey, like, roll up your windows when you drive through this neighborhood? None of that. So it was just kind of this thing like that they were able to do with technology, but also kind of showed like that they have this information. But then like, what did it really mean? And we didn't see it anywhere else. So yeah, that's in there. There's some really cool history stuff too. So I was researching and learned about in Austria in World War I, they had these like 10-foot wooden statues of soldiers, and you'd get a nail for like a penny, and you pound these nails, and eventually the thing would be steeled. So if you look them up online, nailmen, Wehrman M. Eisen, or nailmen, and these would represent morale, like civilian morale. So like, what did we have for civilian morale during the onset of the pandemic in March and April? Really kind of like nothing. So I talked about how this looked through history, and then also like during World War II, this Committee for National Morale, which existed, and like what could have happened, like some really clear things that wouldn't have taken much for money and that people would have bought into. Now imagine this, like you could have been, I mean, you could have been part of this like fitness program, fitness and fortitude. So hey, everybody, like with your Fitbit, or you can log into a portal and subscribe and work with tech and government on that. You could have it up. And if you log in 5 days in a row, you're at home here and, you've done, some walking, or you're lifting your cans of soup or a couple jumping jacks or whatever it is in this thing. Hey, now you get your badge, you get your participation badge for 5 days, and you can post it to social media. So let everybody know on Facebook and Instagram and whatever that you've got this badge. And this really would buy into people. You could have like a group, you could have a leaderboard. And the thing is, it would have been exciting for people. Like at the start, when they were really terrified and confused and like this whole panic buying, you could have had this campaign where you're like, you know what? We're going to help you improve your fitness, right? And if you're more fit, your immune system is stronger. Now that's an axiom. That's not arguable. I mean, the studies are countless. See, National Institute of Health, everything. If you exercise, your immune system correspondingly increases. So right there, you could say you're fortifying yourself against what's out there. We didn't do it though. And the crazy thing is, like, that system already existed, which I wrote about in the book. Like it existed with the U.S. military in 2015 and 16. This online portal, the way you could do this. And imagine, like, you could have had big companies get into this. Netflix is like, hey, if you could, you'll get access to a couple free movies, or Amazon's like, hey, a couple gift certificates or 15% off your orders, or Pizza Hut. Yeah, like you've got this, you can redeem, just like you do if you earn points for things. And it could just have that whole system. It would have been so motivating for a lot of people because they're so extrinsically motivated. Not for everybody, but like a lot of people. It would have been this big kind of parade that people are joining in that gets them down the road until you can really sit down and figure out and say, well, what are we going to do to, what's going to be the next pivot after we get done with this fitness and fortitude. But the thing is, like, we never had that first effort, right? We didn't have that. So, this whole thing of, how do you keep things in this transitive state when things are chaotic for yourself, for your kids? People are, especially elderly people. I have one person in here who, they were in their 80s, right? And they had been a reporter their entire life. And then people thought they had dementia because they just didn't want to leave the house anymore and these other things and whatever. And they're like, well, I don't have any place to go. Everything's shut down. And a lot of stuff is not on TV. Like the sporting events weren't on TV. The NCAA had canceled. So it wasn't that this person had dementia. It's just like all the things that they participated in, the Friday night fish fry, stuff like that, had just been kind of gone. So there was really no need to have a watch or a calendar for a while. They were just hanging out at their house. And so let's go. The Competent Man. Any reason why only focus on school safety in the book and not other books in other areas? So, well, The Competent Man, I was a school administrator for over 20 years. So that's why this book is school safety, because that was one of my roles. And I presented extensively on school safety. In 2013, I was on PBS, and I did a presentation on school safety on PBS. So let's do this. So yeah, I did 2 presentations on PBS, and the first one was 2013. So let's do this. Okay, so that is me, school security and crisis preparedness. I was back in 2013. My first presentation, again, my expertise area, and that's a fascinating one because actually I figured out where like tornadoes would hit across the state and stuff like this, and it was saying, you're in this area of the state, like over the last 50 years, you should probably do an extra tornado drill because you're just more likely to have a tornado, nuclear power plant, stuff like that. That was a good show. So, and then the other one that I did, and this one was more recent. This one was in 20. This one was in 2020. 19, and here was this was the One School Safety in America: Rhetoric versus Reality, which is basically my book put into a national presentation format. So this is like all over, the country. This airs regularly in Houston, Jacksonville, Reno, places like that. So it's pretty cool. So yeah, this one, that picture, by the way, I wanted to get this picture. That's right here, me holding the remote, the clicker, and stuff like that. And I'm up at the podium, and there's an audience and all that. So I contacted public television just in the last week, and I said, I'd like to have this picture and have it made up as like a you know big background for my office, my home office, because it's just like it's a cool picture. Like I'm serious. I'm like looking out at somebody. It's like this angled view. It's got, and they're like, okay, we can't provide you the picture because of copyright. And we don't really sell these, and they were cool about it. And I said, well, okay, I guess. Okay, so I get it. I can't get the picture. But then they said, well, but we've got another idea. We if you come here, we can set things up, and we can take the picture. We can have somebody take the picture and give it to you. And I'm like, whoa. The problem with that is, like, that's a time machine. Like, that was me 3 years ago. I don't look like that anymore. Like, I would to come back and to repose, but they were serious. Like, they contacted me a few times and said, no, we'd open up the studio and we'd do the back, so everything would kind of look this way and you could kind of be positioned. And I'm like, yeah, I appreciate it. Like, that you do that. But I said, no, I'm pretty good here. I don't need to do that. So I've got a couple pictures people took in the audience that they sent to me anyway. And I don't know, like, it was good. It'd being back me. Like, I just thought that would be like a cool thing to have in the background there. So, so yeah, so but what I did is, so the new book, The Velocity of Information, isn't about school safety. That is not, a school safety book. That is about human thinking during chaotic times, 18 months that I took to put together, over 3,000 hours. I mean, 10 interviews, hundreds of pages of transcription with that, 471 endnotes or citations, but yet, like, it's parables. Like, when you read it, it's me telling the stories to you of all, throughout the history, or like these 10 people. And it's so engaged. Like, you'd be able to walk away and say, yeah, Juan Brown and the Oroville Dam, here's what that was about. Like, here's where the news really wasn't covering it, and this guy went on his plane and he was like reporting what was really going on. Then he started to learn how much water comes in, how much water goes out, and what they're going to have to do to fix this. So he goes up there, he's talking to like the workers, and so all of these things about face validity, right? And building a member check network. So it's really awesome to go with that book. And so that releases in hardback, paperback, and ebook on April 15th. And then later will be the audio book of that too. So and that's going to be awesome, because I went through different people. We interviewed, they auditioned the audiobook, which was cool. Like, I never had that happen before. So then I'm like, okay, I am, I picked the one person, and so that will be in audio too. So if you're just cruising, or if you're like our good friend here, Sast, who does the Cannonball Run, 196 miles an hour to and from work, if you do cross country, it might cover that. Might be enough time for that. So if you're trying to make a positive impact, Alex, winter is coming. Are you ready? Heading out. Cheers. Hey, thanks, homeschool time. Winter is coming. I am ready. I got 14 cords of firewood stacked, so I am good. Fun fact. And then Juan Brown is an awesome human being. Yeah. So Juan Brown's channel continues to grow. He has so many areas that he covered. Also, after the Kobe Bryant helicopter crash, Juan was talking about, again, as a pilot, like what communications you have when you're flying, and then in different conditions, what are the communications? And then once the NTSB report came out, he was going through that and doing more of a layman interpretation of what was in the report. So just Juan, absolutely fantastic guy. So So yeah, I am thankful for our 1,010 people watching right now, which seems like I don't know what stream we got brought into here, because that is outright amazing. So if you can if you can come in and do me a favor here. Let's check out the subscribership. So we are at 554. So so we have 1,000 people watching, but I've gone up by three viewers, which I appreciate. I appreciate all you guys. But yeah, so if you can, get in there and subscribe to the channel, man, that would mean a ton to me to be able to do that. To have you do that, like to get closer to 1,000 subscribers. So, and I subscribed to Juan since he has 160 subscribers. Thanks, Sest. So, yeah, or back when Juan Brown was, I mean, just added a small number of subscribers. So yeah, thumbs up. Please, this is a big opportunity for me with this many viewers. There are 157 episodes of the Safety Doc, and including my interview with Larry Lawton, America's Biggest Jewel Thief. So, and with those 157 shows, there are everyone has a blog post, which about 3 to 5 minutes to read to boil things down, and then it's also out there in audio. So on safetyphd.com, that's my website, safetyphd.com. You can go on and find every single show that I've done, just, and it will have audio, it will have video. Audio is always leveled. So like if you're just listening while you're like commuting or working out in your garage, or, or doing something, it's good background stuff. And then that blog post, in case you want to learn a little bit more or get some links. So yeah, there's some pretty unique things. The next show that is coming up, either Sunday or Monday, I'll post that, but it is essential versus non-essential versus unessential, because in March of 2020, our government declared all of us either essential or non-essential. You woke up and you were in one of those bins, but now we have this new category emerging, which is unessential. And what does that mean? So, all right, I hate to bring a close to this because I don't know when the next time is. There will be 988 people watching this show, and I wish now it's 1,018. I wish there was this way I could go back and find where all of you great people are who have subbed to this show. But so yeah, they must come out of Ohio. Streaming out on an afternoon on Friday is interesting. So yeah, I think they're coming out of Ohio. These are all Ohioans. So apparently I found the time slot, and the time slot is right now. So yeah, well, I know that. I mean, thank you. Thank you for the people who have then taken this show right and have shared it through their social media channels, which is the reason this show is getting so many views right now. I mean, I'm very aware that is happening. You've gifted me that. So before, just a thumbs up while I still have it here with YouTube. If you can thumbs up, do comments, and subscribe, because at 554 subscribers for the channel, I'm up 100 subscribers, but I want to get to 1,000 subscribers. And it's really big too, like for the book launch, to have 1,000 subscribers. So please, before you exit out of here, and let's just take a look at how many subscribers. If you subscribe to me, I will subscribe back to you. You're going to get honest stuff from the Safety Doc podcast. You're also going to get novel stuff, great interviews. And yeah, so I'm definitely going to make sure that I keep giving you the genuine content. So let's check where we're at for subscribers. So maybe this hasn't updated a while. I don't know. It's still saying 554. So it doesn't seem, maybe it hasn't caught up yet, because you guys are just hitting that like crazy. So yeah. All right. So that is coming up. We're going to do a show on entropy, and we're also going to do a show on what is I'm going to break down the book once the book releases, kind of by sections. But I'm going to do a show on something called responsible third party, and especially now with the trial that's happening in Kenosha, Wisconsin. um, there's something that's missing in that trial, and it's missing for a reason. And we're going to talk about why this whole thing of responsible third party hasn't been introduced in the trial, but it actually makes a lot of sense. Like when we talk about it, when we're going to sit down and do a show on it, and then that might also impact you at some point in your life, if you are engaged in some type of legal situation, of what is a responsible third party, if it's property, if it's damage, if it's anything like that, to give you a better idea of that. So, like, with all of these people watching, before we go, could any of you start to post over in the chat, or do you not have that ability? Are you kind of just watching through a link here? But so let me put so it is the safety, it's the safety doc on YouTube, the safety doc. And you'll see the little yellow and orange sign where it says the safety doc. If you can do me a favor and subscribe on YouTube, that would be greatly appreciated. Again, the safety doc on YouTube. And let me get that link down here for you. So um, I need to take a picture of this where it says 1,000 people are watching, because like I don't think anybody would. They're like, really? I'm like, you bet. That's face validity. Like that's why we have 1,000 people watching right now. So I'm going to actually take a picture of myself right here. So it's a picture of me taking a picture of me with 1,000. So 1, 2, 3, smile, David. Hey, look at that. I took a picture of myself. All right. So yeah. Hey, by the way, the Bill Michaels show is on right now, and Bill has a 33 people watching, and I have 1,000. So so I'm stomping the Bill Michaels show. It is being stomped at this moment with actually 1,000 followers. So all right. I don't know who the kind person is, or people who have done this. I will actually do this one more time there. So, and we'll even do a close up here. Look at this. Whoa. Like, that was making my day. So wow. Wow. All right. So everybody, please thumbs up, please subscribe. And I'm going to also reiterate what our good friend Dark has said is be kind to people, take care of yourself. A few things, things are never as bad as they are, and things are never as good as they are. So kind of modulate yourself. I mean, recognize and celebrate, but keep yourself in that area where you're recognizing things. Things are never as bad as they are. Things are never as good as they are. Use transitive language. I'm going to do this. Journal. Move yourself. Date. This is what happened on this date, and then next time this is what happened, and you're moving forward. Transitive language. But yeah, showing empathy to people. You never know where they're at. A few kind words, just a smile, a thank you, means a lot to people. And today, I mean, this has meant a lot to me on the show, of having the comments, and having people, a strong showing here for the Safety Doc podcast. So, man, this is absolutely incredible. So, I don't. Let's, if you can bear with me here. So one of the things Larry Lawton posted 7 days ago is, he goes, my famous Ramen Noodle Dish, Prison Cooking with Larry. So he has quite a few shows like that, which are pretty amazing. Like talking about the things that he would cook while he was in prison. So let's just check where we are at live for this show right now. So so we have updating updating live 9,986 views in for this show. so so this show has 9,956 views. So let's get this show let's get the show to 10,000 views, okay? So we have nine now so 9 yeah, 900 um 9,033 uh this is absolutely 900 views. We are within 38 of my first show ever with 10,000 views. Will we get there? The question is Elephant Armpit going to help us get there? Is he going to be contacting people on the Rock River and saying, hey, get in here and say, oh my God, 10,031 views for this show. This has officially just put me into the big leagues. And oh my God, this is absolutely awesome. Whoa, this is I think this automatically I don't have the subscriber count yet, but I think this for the watch hours will get me much closer to where I need to be. Um so yeah, this is so my birthday was Sunday, and this is kind of like this birthday gift coming a few days later. Plus, I turned 50 on Sunday, um, so yeah. So School of Errors: Rethinking School Safety in America. You can get it at places that sell books, and please, if you do read it, to leave a review on Amazon. We're getting more reviews. The more reviews, the better for the new book coming out, The Velocity of Information. Human Thinking During Chaotic Times, and it's the only book to kind of take this stuff on with trying to understand how people perceive extended chaos events that last more than 90 days. So what happens is, and this really hasn't happened since the 30s, when you get to 90 days in chaos, you hit this thing called finite voltage, boom. And in the military, it was known as kind of burnout, right? That's how the soldiers would describe it to the psychiatrist. They'd say, I just burned out. They had this old sergeant syndrome, or saying, I'm 20 years older, I'm 21, I'm the oldest man here. Like the rest have all been killed, captured, or have a mental collapse. So we know like that people have this fraying point. So you get 75 days in, you got to start watching. So when I interviewed Clay Martin of Concrete, the author of Concrete Jungle, Reconnaissance Marine, he said, what we did is we had something called a cracked board. Think like a cracked egg, but a cracked board. And when soldiers would be on deployment for a long time, we're talking like 50 plus days, and it's a high stress environment. They would sometimes crack, like just like lose it. And instead of stigmatizing that, they would actually go and put that, they would have them write their name on a board. It could be a piece of cardboard or whatever, the cracked board. So it was this acknowledgement. It was naming it. It was tangible. It was something. This cracked board, you'd hit the cracked board. It wasn't this moment of shame that you hit a cracked board. That wasn't part of it. Not at all. And then, you kind of they do something, goofy, or to recognize it or whatever, even though it's still in this high stress, high tense environment. And then it deflates that. It's this cathartic process, gets it, people reset, and they're not stigmatized by it. And how often do we hear about that? We've never heard about that on a government campaign. We've never heard about that taught, to employers, to, with employees to kind of do this type of thing, or parents to do it, with families, or the stress thing of kind of acknowledges this crackboard thing. So that's really a cool part of the book too is Clay saying, "Hey, by naming things and having this crackboard experience, it's a way to take away the power from this overwhelming feeling, like you get in and you name it." So the other thing is that 90 days into chaos, if chaos continues, you get to this point where then it's called crowd and behavior, and you might have seen that. And so let me do this. Crowd and behavior. Remember when people were buying, or not buying, they're adopting dogs and cats and animals and things like that, right? And they're surrounding themselves with pillows and they're painting their house, and because they're going to be home no more, and pools, like outdoor pools they're putting in and things like this, because they want to feel comfortable, be, because they don't think things are going to get better soon. So crowd and behavior, we saw it at 90 days in chaos, and it's really a scary thing because it's a dark omen. It means that people don't believe this is transitory. They're not going to do these crowd in behaviors if they think, oh, like, you know, summer's going to come around and I'm going to be able to do all the things that I could do and go all the places I want. And so they don't think chaos is over. And that's where we're still at. Like, people are like, well, why aren't people going back into the workforce? Why aren't people doing some of these things? And it's like, they don't believe this is done. They still believe like we are in very uncertain times. Like, this doesn't have an endpoint. It's not like World War II with, the signing, the surrender on the Missouri, or, there is no defined endpoint right now. People still, I mean, inflation is through the roof every time they go shopping. They experience it. They see it when they drive past the gas station, right? The neighborhood businesses, the mom and pop places closing down. So it is totally saturating them. They don't feel that this is going to be over anytime soon. So when you do crowd in behavior, that means it's not only weeks, but it's months, but it's years. Like, this might be the condition for the next 5 years. We don't know. And then, so you got to approach people and recognize if they're crowding in, they're really saying, I'm very nervous right now. I'm very afraid that this is going to last a long time. So I'm not going to try new things. I'm not going to venture out. I'm not going to plan these vacations. I'm not going to, start a business. I'm not going to maybe go back to school, or if I am, I'm going to make sure it's something, if I get sorted essential, non-essential again, that I can do remotely, or I'm not going to get, tied into a location. I'm not going to maybe live in that condo or rent in a big city, because what if transportation gets shut down and now I can't go places because the bus is shut down and stuff like that. So we are in this crowd in behavior. And again, it says it's really a dark place to be. Eventually something will change with that. But right now we're still in crowd in behavior. And then I talked about the four phases of chaos, and people typically think of chaos as it's there, it's not, it's binary. Either you're in chaos or you're not in chaos, and that's incomplete. That's not true. Chaos has different conditions. So one of them is brief and localized. 1 to 5 days. Something happens in those cases. Could be a small earthquake. The Minneapolis bridge, the I-35 bridge collapse, would have been a brief and localized chaos event. I mean, that didn't ripple across the whole Midwest. So there's certainty. When you have events like that, it's like, well, this will be resolved. Like, there will be new systems put in place to, get transit to where it needs to go, stuff like that. So people are certain this will be resolved. The second one is intermediate and regional. Think about the back, I think it was 2003. It was in Europe. They had the heat wave. And at that point, things lasted, for months with the heat wave, several months. And then the rivers were so warm that they couldn't use them to cool the nuclear reactors. So they had to take some of those offline. So then you have less power for air conditioning and all this stuff. So, that's something. Also, the Colonial Pipeline being shut down by ransomware. that was also an intermediate and regional chaos event impacting that, east coast of the US. And the thing is, like, when will it end? Or was there some, backdoor code which is still active that could be reactivated by, hackers or something like that? And then we talk about kind of these extended and international chaos events. Most recently, 1986 Chernobyl, where that was an event which, not only months but years in radiation, showing up in crops and things like that in around the U.S. For the following years. I remember I was a little league baseball player at that time, and the baseball field was a block from our house. And we went up for a team meeting, and the head of the league was saying, "Hey, like, we, with Chernobyl, right, other side of the world, and who nobody knows this, and of course, back at that time, Russia's bad, US is good. It's kind of the whole Rocky Four mentality, right? Drago and Rocky. But so we're all on these, wooden bleachers in this only baseball town, right? Or only baseball field in a small town. And it's got like a snow fence in the outfield, stuff like that, just and so the head of the league was just a dad, right? And he said, well, we might not be able to have games this year because if the radioactive particles land on the grass and the dirt and stuff, bleachers, then we just couldn't play. And how do you measure this? Well, they had one Geiger counter in town. It was at the high school, and who knew how well that worked, right? But and it always like beeps no matter what. It does click, 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 click. Just even if there's just regular radiation always coming through the atmosphere, photons or whatever. And so, but it never happened, like, because they didn't know anything. They're just kind of saying something that they had been told from maybe the Little League Commission or whatever. But then I'm like, that's a block away from my house. Like, I play at the diamond every day, and then I play at the field next to it, play football. And then, like, I play at my house in the driveway for basketball, So what does this really mean? Like, how do you try to get away from radiation? Like, what does this mean? Hey, welcome, Shelter in Paradise. Shelter in Paradise, we currently have 1,039 people watching the show, including you. So, Shelter in Paradise, thank you very, very much for being here. And thanks, everybody, for a thumbs up and a follow of the show. Appreciate that very much. So, and then there's this other, so we talked about chaos being brief and localized, intermediate and regional, extended and international, like Chernobyl. And then another one is comorbid and international. So the pandemic was international, and then social unrest was international. So comorbid are two things happening or multiple things happening at once, which are international chaos. That's very rare. So we just had this extended period of still uncertainty of these comorbid events for chaos. And there's a difference too between crisis and chaos, and people don't talk about that. But what chaos is, or let's talk about crisis. So, like the missile crisis, Cuba and the U.S. A crisis usually can be resolved. You can do certain steps and resolve a crisis, and then it's done, right? There's always this thought of we can do steps to solve this crisis. Chaos, those scales in a nonlinear fashion. You don't know what's going to happen in chaos. It's unpredictable. So you can't really plan for a chaos event to plan to mitigate it. So there's a difference there. Crisis, you can plan for, and you can probably take steps to avert it, to solve it, and maybe like just completely end it, right? With the Cuban Missile Crisis, just be done. Chaos doesn't happen that way. So there's this rheostat. There's this, turn it up higher, turn it up lower type of thing with chaos. There's this weird part of chaos too that I wrote about, where think about Halley's Comet comes around the U.S. or comes around the world, and then it like way out in orbit, and many, many years later it circles back. And chaos is kind of like that too. Like, we can be in a chaos event and suddenly it like gets kind of further away from us, and we just don't recognize. We think it's over, but it's not over. It's still happening. We're just situated into it where it's not quite as crazy as what it was, and that's our new normal, or Taurus we call it, just our routine. But it's still chaotic. Like, we don't realize it because we want to be in this like non-chaos time. So yeah, all of these things, going on, and There was this campaign in the 1940s and 50s, and Coronet Films. I don't know if anybody remembers this, or you can check them out on YouTube. They give a link to them, Coronet Films, but they were these series of films meant for modifying social behavior, and it would be like how to make friends or how to try new things and stuff like that. And I was pretty convinced after 2020, when things started to open up again, we would see this coronet films type approach, like of okay, like how do you greet people, or if you're going to take your phone in to get serviced at Best Buy, like is there a routine to that? Like do you have to like push it across the counter and then they spray a mist on it or a UV light? And then like what if somebody offers a handshake? Do you handshake or not handshake? So what does this look like? And so we never got there. We never got to this, but maybe we still will. I don't know, but it's interesting because I thought we would have this much more drawn out process of how do we socially greet people, um, what is proper social etiquette. But what arenas, stadiums open up and things like that, and people rush right back. So people want their lives back, and that's also something I wrote in the philosophy of information. They're willing to comply, they're willing to respond, and for a certain amount of time, and then after that they're like, I want my life back. And when that starts, I mean, they aggressively go there, full stadiums, coming back into stores and ordering and things like that. So they want their life back. At the same time, right, they're kind of still in this crowd and behavior, saying, oh, I'm not gonna necessarily plan this trip, or if I'm starting a small business, I'm probably not going to do it right now because I want to make sure things aren't going to get shut down again. And then all this disruptive stuff. I was writing I was writing about 3D printing. I wrote about 3D printing in the velocity of information, and I said, we went from warehouse in 1980 to just-in-time manufacturing in the 1990s, and now we're kind of going from just-in-time manufacturing where things are made and then they're shipped out to wherever. So warehouse, things are made, put in a warehouse, and then maybe be pulled out of a warehouse. So you had more supply back then, and then you went just in time, like in the 90s was the way things were made. But now we're getting more 3D printed things, right? So this whole thing with the pandemic rocketing people forward to 3D printing, and right now in Texas, I think outside Plano, a company called Icon is printing 20 homes with a 3D printer, 20 homes, and then not only that, but General Electric came out with a white paper, which I wrote about in my book, saying, yeah, we've been working with several 3D printers to 3D print food. So, I mean, yikes, it's kind of weird to think about. But the model is saying, how long before you go to your restaurants and you'll just give me your profile and say, I have a peanut allergy or a shellfish allergy or whatever. And, they'll put it in, but then they'll press, whatever. And whatever the ingredients are, you'll instantly have that, made up for you on the spot. So 3D printing, Shelter in Paradise wrote, 3D printing seems like work from home for manufacturing. It could be. And what, how many homes will have 3D printers? I have quite a few friends who have 3D printers and who are printing mask and ventilator parts during, the pandemic. So, or will you go to, this is another example, you're going to your auto parts store and you say, yeah, I need like a fuel pump for my car. So, they type in the VIN number of your car, and instead of going to the back and pulling it off the shelf, they are instead they're just like punching the code in and the 3D printer. And there are 3D printers that are now using metals. The 3D printer just goes to work, and 8 minutes later, it's like, here it is. So it's not coming off of a shelf. So, I mean, there's efficiencies, but then there's also, what if that gets hacked, or what if the power goes down? um, what does this look like? It's becoming a subscription service, right? Like we're just going to subscribe to things like your shopping list. I mean, just kind of as predicted now, certain things like come to you on a schedule if it's your ink is out or something else and gets sent to you. Half your shopping list, you might look at it and say, these things I'll just enter in and they'll just show up at the house, or else they'll just be sent over to my 3D printer, and these things will just be printed off my printer. I'll have a subscription to whatever company. We think about Amazon, right? And all of Amazon stuff, but it's 100 years ago. It was the Sears catalog. Sears Roebuck catalog was your Amazon. I mean, you could order all kinds of things. I mean, it's a 1,000-page catalog, and it would arrive at your house, or the Wells Fargo, wagon would bring it, or something like that. But your Sears catalog, and right, that was mail order. I mean, so you could have the stores and stuff, but you could, a lot of rural people, rural America, they would just order, and it would come in. And so we're kind of coming full circle on some of that. I think I think the biggest part of the velocity of information, when that book comes out, when you buy that book, when you read that book, you're going to look at things differently. You are going to see your everyday environment differently. These little face validity things, indicators, which I wrote about, interviewed Joe Doley, indicators you're going to see in your environment that you never saw before. You're going to know when things are starting to go sideways. You're going to be able to get in front of the pack, right? You're going to be ahead of 90% of the people, and the people that you care and they're close to you. You're going to be able to help navigate them into a better place faster, because you're going to know what to look for, the nuanced signs that aren't going to be evident to other people until later on, even if and some people won't even accept these things. Like, they'll just have this dissonance, as was spoken about so many times in here. So yeah, cognitive dissonance. Let's see here. Cognitive dissonance. And all right. So, oh, all right. Well, thank you, Solitude Surfer. It says, "Hey, this is the best show ever, Doc." Well, I appreciate that. All right. As now we are at 11,671 views. So I don't know how many hours that watch hours that, because we're probably up to the number of watch hours I would actually need for a to get monetized, and I need more subscribers, because we are still live. See live count. Let's do that. We are at 554 subscribers, live count. So we're there. On November 7th, we're at 491. So we are definitely increasing. We're up at 554, 11,000, 593 views. So wow, this is great. So I feel like this is like hey, it's Mictobis. So all right, so Mictobis, we have almost 1,000 people who are watching the show right now, and a lot of them are asking, "Where's Mictobis?" So I'm like, I think he's going to be back. So I don't know exactly what's happening here. We must have got I think when we started to talk about the infrastructure plan, and framing that out as really that's about entropy, and this whole plan should be about countering entropy in systems. Somebody was just like, "Yep, that's the approach. That's how we have to describe this. That's how we have to appropriately frame this, so it absolutely makes sense to people." So actually, like, my real-time views now are going down. So I was just at 11,521, and now I'm at 11,503. Now I'm at 11,467. So so that's not the way that it's supposed to happen. So we are actively being censored here. So Mictobis, I was practicing my karate art. Should have my current painting done soon. Martial artist paints picture. Mictobis. So I've just lost more views. What? Okay. We were almost at 12,000 views about 2 minutes ago, and now we are 11,389. So we're actively being suppressed at the moment. So I guess this is my sign to sign off, because otherwise this entire show will end up like negative interest rates. Um, and I will end up with minus 10,000 views, which would be very bad. And I also lost a subscriber. What's going on? So, all right. Well, everybody, let me pull out my ending video here, my ending overlay. So, and thank you so much. Shows coming up either Sunday or Monday. It will be entropy, or not entropy. It's going to be essential, non-essential, and unessential. But this is the safety doc, everybody, signing out. So we have the end, dun, dun, the end, the safety doc. Thank you, everybody. And please like, sub, and share with people. Sub. We want to get the show to 100. We want to 100 times 10 or 1,000, right? Or 10,000, but let's do 1,000. Thank you so much, and be kind to others and have a terrific day. This is your good friend, the Safety Doc, and I am out. Safety Doc.